gentlemen, it's 5 o'clock on Monday, May 1st, 2023. Goldsboro City Council work session is called to order, and I'll ask the clerk to call the roll.
Mayor Ham.
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Polite.
Present.
Councilwoman Jones. Present. Councilman Broadway.
Present.
Councilwoman Matthews.
Present.
Councilman Gaylor.
Present.
Councilman Bax.
Here.
Okay, we're all here, have a full house, so we'll speak to the adoption of the agenda. Does anyone have an issue they would like to change or add to the agenda?
Move to adopt. Second.
A motion to, and a second to adopt the agenda. All in favor, signify by raising your hand. And approved. The agenda is adopted, so we'll go right into the old business, and we'll start with our representative from the United Way, Ms. Sherry Archibald. Good evening, ma'am, again.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council.
Good
Good
evening.
evening.
I am here this evening just to give you an update to the timeline. As you know, when I spoke with you in early April, I shared with you that my timeline would be very tight to turn this around, as I was hopeful to be able to do that before our United Way campaign begins, which is in July. So I wanted to just go over where we are today and then answer any questions if I could for you. So I have passed out for you a timeline so that you can see where we are. As I shared with you, I had sent a survey out to each of you a few times in April, wanting to be able to get your feedback on what your priorities are and to be able to hear some of your preferences. So based on that survey, you'll notice that your priorities were basic needs, health and wellness, education, financial stability, animal welfare, recreation, arts, and culture. And so that's the order in which they were received. Also, a preference was to fund programs rather than the agency. And another preference listed to seek measurable outcome, an interest to build capacity for our nonprofit organizations, and to serve all demographics. I have recruited a panel of volunteers, which is how we operate our funding for United Way. And so we do have a City of Goldsboro Impact Committee that is ready to go. And so I have them on hold until we receive applications and are ready to get them started. I did investigate and was hopeful to be able to use the grant management software that the United Way uses. And depending on how this relationship goes, if this is something that we continue to do, it may be something we want to look into in the future. But for now, I was concerned that it might be challenging for our nonprofits to do that because there's just such a crunch time that they would not have enough time for the training. Usually we have our process open for about 6 weeks so that folks have time to be able to get trained for the software. And so I did not want to create a barrier for our nonprofits. So what we're doing is we're still following a United Way process. However, it's very similar to our current process that we work with FEMA's Emergency Food and Shelter Program. We created a City of Goldsboro nonprofit organizational funding criteria, so a notice of funding opportunity. I'm about 90% complete of that. It does outline all of the priorities that you all outlined, and it shares what the goals are. So we'll be providing that as part of it, and it will provide the details as to what the expectations will be. I've also completed about 90% of the application process, which is 2 steps. The first step will be the requirements that will be needed, and once they can confirm that they're able to provide all these requirements, which are very similar to what they have been doing in the past, then the step 2 will be the application process. So that is where I am and what I have been hustling through for the month of April. So I wanted to share with you where we're looking at moving forward. This timeline is just really important for me to make sure that I'm able to stay on task for you all. But you'll notice that the next important piece that I need from you is to know what the amount of the funding is. So that is next on your list, and then moving forward will be for me. I'll be promoting this nonprofit organizational funding opportunity to the public this month. Can't believe we're already in May. And we'll be opening up the applications, looking at that for May the 10th through the 19th for step 1, and then for step 2 being May the 22nd through June the 7th. And then in June, as you can see, in June we'll be looking at assessing those applications. The committee will review them. There'll be presentations that will be provided from the nonprofits to the committee. That will happen during the week of June the 16th, or excuse me, June the 19th. And then our plan is to come back here the very 1st of July to provide recommendations to you. Any questions that I can answer or any discussion?
So let me say that we have had discussions, not formal discussion necessarily, but discussions about the amount of money for our nonprofits, and I would hope, and we have to, for that matter, at our next meeting, come up with a figure that we can give you. That way you can meet your May 23rd deadline. I'll open it to the council if they have any comments or questions they want to make.
I have a question. Would there be any grace period or extended time for, let's say, an organization? I'm pretty sure your process is going to be a little different, a lot more cleaner, maybe, possibly. So, if an organization is missing something, will they have any grace period to get that information in, or is your deadline just your deadline? That's it.
The deadline will be hard. However, there'll be a time for being able to, as part of the application, it says if you don't have everything, please come back to United Way, talk to us, because maybe they don't have a solicitation license, and that's something that we can help walk them through getting. So it does indicate on there, please let us know if there's something that we can help to make sure that you have. So there'll be that opportunity during that timeline. And just to kind of give you a little more input, there are going to be two types of grants that will be open. One, recognizing that there might be nonprofits who are doing work in our community who are have not received funding before, but maybe they are doing that work and they have the information to be able to share what those demographics are and what the criteria is, and do the reporting. So if the committee chooses that they want to make a recommendation to fund that organization, then what our criteria will be, it will be based on reimbursement. So once they can show the work has been done, then they'll be reimbursed on a halfway mid-year reporting. So they'll do the mid-year reporting and then get reimbursed. And that will hopefully allow them to kind of get their feet in the door and get them, accustomed to what kind of reporting is required and be comfortable with that. So that's one of the grant opportunities. And the other is obviously if they've received funding, they've had programs going on for long periods of time, they're obviously going to be able to show that reporting. So probably it might be a little easier for them because this is something they've done for a long time. But it allows for both of those. I heard what you were saying in the survey, interest to help build capacity, which also means, helping to hold their hand a little bit to get there. And so hopefully we'll be able to do that.
Thank you for that.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions?
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sharon.
Appreciate, again, the opportunity to serve
Thank
with
you. Look forward to seeing you back.
Thank you.
Okay. Next item is our parking update with downtown development. Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. You have to bear with me. I'm battling a little bit of a cold, but I'm here for y'all. Okay, so I've got Greg Mills with me. I've made an introduction before, but he is our business and property development specialist. So he's going to weigh in on areas of input from our community, specifically our downtown stakeholders, businesses, property owners, employees, residents, and the like. And then at the conclusion of our presentation, I'd like to introduce you to two other folks who are going to share some comments with you. One is Kimber O'Shea, who is our Downtown Merchant Chair. She's the chair of the Downtown Merchant Committee, as well as Patrick Riley, who is a large stakeholder in the downtown parking discussion as well. All right, so Greg and I are here this evening to provide an update on downtown parking opportunities, which we have worked on and discussed extensively over the last 5 months and really beyond, which Kimber will speak to that when she makes her comments. But I'd like to start with a brief overview of downtown parking capacity Am I going the wrong way? There we go. Concerns and essentially how we got here today. So I want to paint a clear picture of how we got to tonight, and ultimately our goal is to provide you with a significant amount of data, which was our charge after the March meeting, was to collect some additional data, get some additional feedback, and present some options to allow you to make an educated decision as we move forward on parking management. Oh, let's go back to that slide. Okay, so what we see here is just a brief history of the parking studies that we've done and a snapshot of parking in the past. So prior to 2013, if you can recall, before streetscape construction, we had 2-hour street parking that was located and enforced throughout downtown. The signage was removed in preparation for streetscape construction, and the intent was to use the study to guide our next steps in reinstalling the signage, because the language, as you recall, is still in our ordinances. In 2016, we began or commissioned a parking study. Downtown Development in the City commissioned a parking study. It was executed to determine the current and future parking needs and capture the availability. That study was completed in 2017, and a lot of the discussions that we've had to this point reference that study. It analyzed through the consultant the parking during peak times and briefly covered future enforcement and management opportunities. A consultant was hired in January of this year to put on a public input forum, which we had a lot of great input from that. We had a lot of great participation, and I'll share the results of that with you shortly. The consultant's presentation further analyzed the following. He looked at growth, which actually has exceeded the projected assumptions from the 2016 and 17 study. And that study anticipated future parking demand of 593 spaces by 2026. That would be an additional 593 spaces. To our knowledge, only 55 have been added in the 7-year period since the study's completion. The consultant also analyzed the types of parking, users, and their behavior, public, private, citizens, employees, residents, and visitors, who are all stakeholders in the downtown parking discussion. He analyzed current concerns and opportunities for improvement and proposed potential management options. I want to add a couple of notes on the growth side of things. So we know that we haven't added as many spaces as the consultant said that we would likely need to anticipate future use with all of the development that we would see. Since 2017, we've exceeded that growth. The number of downtown apartments has doubled, and we now have over 217, I believe 220 residential units in downtown Goldsboro within our MSD. There have also been more than 40 building rehabilitations that have been completed during that time frame. And as Greg can tell you, every day we're getting more and more inquiries about locating businesses downtown. So we are at the cusp. We're just going to continue to grow. So really now is the time. Also, the plan, I thought it was important to share. There was a lot of discussion about the 2017 study in the last meeting. The plan talked about 3 components of management. Those are education, encouragement, and enforcement. And the goal is really to kind of start small and move up to enforcement. So I want to share with you what has been done since 2017. By way of education, which the plan said would be implemented, we rolled out wayfinding signage throughout downtown that points out where parking is. There's also signage that says, please park in designated spaces. All of that was completed and rolled out in 2020. There's also been encouragement, and examples of encouragement are parking share situations. So we have helped facilitate conversations with multiple businesses to share private parking to help reduce the strain on the public parking on street specifically. In addition to that, we've encouraged walking downtown. So we've rolled out, our office specifically has rolled out 1-mile walking maps to encourage kind of healthy living and utilizing the walkability of downtown. So all of those things have been done. Enforcement is truly the next logical step, which is laid out in the 2017 study. The study actually encouraged at 3 to 5 years to begin enforcement, and then 6 to 10 years to consider paid on-street parking. So we are following that study, and we've exceeded the growth that was predicted in the study. So I just wanted to spend a little bit of time talking about that. Okay, so now getting into our consultant's downtown parking forum that was done in January. At the beginning of the presentation, he shared these bullets, which I think are important for us to discuss as we look forward in management. So it's important that we create a system that supports business and growth downtown. Downtown parking needs to support economic vitality. It's part of the economic vitality discussion. Parking has to be balanced between public and private interests. Users include merchants, residents, visitors, and employees. And lastly, parking has to be managed to balance all of these needs. What we don't have now is parking management. Okay, a snapshot of our capacity. So again, this information on the left was provided by the parking study in 2017. At the time of its completion, there were 680 on-street spaces that make up 19% of the downtown parking, 1,249 spaces that are in off-street parking lots, that's 35%. So in total, we have just over 1,900 parking spaces in our downtown that are available to all. And then beyond that, private parking, just over 1,600, which we know now, the only change since 2023 is the addition of 55 spaces in private parking. There was also a heat map that was produced by the consultant that put together this parking study. And just to remind you, the areas in yellow, red, and orange represent the greatest need at peak hours between 11 to 1. Thursday and Friday is when they looked at those. And these are our current conditions. So Greg and I have highlighted the areas that are in the proposed enforcement footprint. And all of those, with the exception of West Mulberry Street, are now beyond 85% occupancy. This is a recap of the vote totals from the public forum back in January. Now, we've discussed this a lot, so I'm just going to focus on the key takeaways here. 42 out of the 50 attendees that came to the forum agreed that some type of parking management is needed at the conclusion of the meeting. And again, attendees, we had a diverse group of stakeholders there. So we had merchants, property owners, employees, and residents, and elected officials. A lot of you were there as well. The parking recommendations that were made by the parking consultant, and the presentation was given to you all at the council retreat in February in response to public feedback and his professional opinion. These were the recommendations that were made by Mr. Dwight Bassett. Manage on-street customer spaces and patrol by time. No change in parking, i.e. we have enough capacity, no need for adding parking. Ticket cars parked for more than 2 or 3 hours. Use courtesy tickets for first-time violators. Develop a continuing education program and explain why you are patrolling the on-street parking. As a follow-up to that, I wanted to remind you of the parking regulations that were proposed and presented by staff both at the February 22nd council retreat and the March 20th regular meeting. The staff recommendation, and staff includes the assistant city manager, planning, engineering, the police department, and downtown. The recommendation is to reinstate regulation and ad signing. Again, just to remind you, we have city ordinances that outline how we would go about regulating downtown parking. The existing city ordinance states that 2-hour parking can be located throughout downtown from 8:30 to 5:30 Monday through Saturday. And again, this is time parking only, strictly during regular business hours. This puts an emphasis on turnover, which I'm going to demonstrate to you why that is so important in just a minute with data. Turnover is the one thing that benefits everybody. You know, lack of turnover is why people drive downtown and they say there's no parking downtown, because cars aren't moving that are parked. So turnover is something that benefits all, and it's affecting the most valuable spaces on street. But again, the spaces I shared with you last time, the spaces that we're proposing managing represent 9% of the total downtown parking. So it's a small portion of what we're talking about. So if you kind of want to think creatively about how, let's say a resident, for example, could utilize parking on street in those 9% of the spaces, let's say that between the hours of 3:30 p.m. and 10:29 a.m., technically, they could park anywhere they want, right? The regulations would start at 8:30. It's 2-hour parking. So there's plenty of time to park in front of one's residence throughout the evening, which I know was a concern at the last meeting. This is just a visual of the proposed 2-hour parking area. So in yellow, you'll see the locations that the city staff are proposing placing parking restrictions. Again, 2-hour business hours only on Center Street from Ash to Chestnut, Mulberry Street from John to James, and Walnut Street from John to James. And in green, we wanted to demonstrate to you where the public parking is located that we talk about within this footprint. So we've highlighted the parking lots that are closest to this area. The striped lot, I just wanted to point out, that's a private lot. It's behind the former Artisan Village space, but that was a parking lot that was discussed during the last meeting. So I wanted to point that out to you. Okay, so what's next? We're going to kind of deep dive into some data that we've collected. So in response to the March 20th meeting, the following data was collected and reviewed. The distance to public parking lots from the businesses and residents in this footprint, updated use and turnover and visuals of those things, as well as lighting in the public parking lots. I understand that was a concern as well, so we wanted to kind of get a snapshot and demonstrate what we see right now. So Greg is really handy with Google Images, and he created this graphic for you to analyze how close the spaces in our footprint are to public parking lots. And what we found is that all businesses and residents within the area of proposed parking management are within 100 yards of a public parking lot. Not private, but public. Probably closer to some private lots. All off-street lots within this map include more than 1,200 public parking spaces. A lot of the businesses are much closer than that, but we wanted to show you that every business and resident is within that 100-yard distance. Okay, and this got a little wonky on the screen, I apologize. So the second thing that we did as part of our data collection is we worked with IT to take drone photos of the recommended enforcement areas. We did this on Thursdays at 11 a.m., 1 p.m., and 4 p.m. Now, weather played a factor, so I wasn't able to get repeat photos in some of the areas, but I think that we still got some great imagery that can demonstrate the use and lack of turnover. So if you want to follow along, I'll be reviewing the photos from north to south, starting with the 200 block of North Center Street. The vehicles that are circled in red are in at least 2 photos. That means that they are in those spaces at least 3 hours, if not longer. Some of them were in the same block, but I couldn't circle them because they had moved spaces. So in the 200 block of North Center Street, this is in front of City Hall between Ash and Mulberry, there were at least 11 cars that were parked in the same space longer than 3 hours, and we saw a 70% utilization throughout the day. 11, and that's only out of 25. Mm-hmm. So that's a significant amount with no turnover.
And I would just also add that this is in March, so you can imagine how that would be greatly increased in June when the weather's nicer and more people are coming downtown.
Yep.
So it's not the most ideal time for people to be out, but still we're above capacity.
That's exactly right. The bulk of these photos were taken on March 31st. So now we are looking at Mulberry Street. On the left, we have West Mulberry. On the right, I'm sorry.
I had a question before you advance. Go back to that
Yep.
last slide. So I know it's an aerial, and you probably can't hone in on those vehicles, but was it, you said what time was that approximately?
11 a.m., 1 p.m., and 4 p.m. The last photo is at 4 p.m., so I used that to determine who was still in this picture from one of the other photos.
My question was, were those possibly staff cars that couldn't park in that overflow that, see, that's my question.
Couldn't or didn't?
Right. And that's my question with the proximity of the salon, and that's been my biggest determining factor. That salon is there, the city parking lot is here, and even when I come, a lot of times I come during my planning period, which is around 11:30, 12, and if I'm off that day, I'm subject to be up here talking to the mayor or somebody in the office for over 2 hours. So I'm wondering, how many of those spaces are staffed? You know, that's my question. And in that closer proximity to that salon, which has, you know, people that are on average in the salon over 2 hours anyway. So that's my biggest, this portion of the block is my biggest
Right.
concern.
And I completely understand that. It's a good problem to have. I think for someone like the Loft, and I've talked to them about this, I think a parking share program is going to be the best bet for them.
Gotcha.
Because there is a private lot next to World Contracting, and they could create some sort of shared program with their parking lot.
Okay.
World Contracting doesn't have that many staff members that utilize that parking lot. And there's also B&G Grill in the back that has that large lot. So, you know, it's going to take some change in use and mindset. It's doable. Just like any other place that we go where we find 2-hour parking, we make it work. We find a different place to park, or we pay to park if we're in a city that accommodates. So, you know, it's going to be a change, certainly, but we're here to demonstrate the data that shows that there's a need.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so on Mulberry Street, on the left we have West Mulberry between James and Center, and on the right, East Mulberry. Now, I don't think that this is a true picture of the use on this block, and I'll tell you why. The left side has 2 vacancies right now that we understand there are some leases that are in the process of being signed currently. And then on the right, when this photo was taken, there were 2 vacancies that were in the process of being filled as well. And then there are also a lot of staff that park on East Mulberry Street. So during the time of this photo, East Mulberry had 65% use and West Mulberry had 18% use. But again, anybody that works on East Mulberry will tell you that that's probably not a true depiction of use. But I wanted to show you the pictures at the same time nonetheless. On the 100 block of North Center, so this is City Hall would be to the right of the picture, and let's see, like Brisa's would be on the left of the picture. So in this photo, 13 cars were parked longer than 3 hours in the same space. And again, there were more than that, but they were in different spaces during the next photo. 89% utilization. So this is where we're seeing just a significant lack of turnover that is affecting businesses, residents, and the like. And there are also a lot of businesses located on this block that have more than 10 vehicles. Employees that have more than 10 vehicles. So that's definitely weighing on the use there.
And that's, to add, that is additionally high, that's considerably higher than the projection back in 2017. Already, it's higher than it was.
Walnut Street, this is, you know, again, I think West Walnut Street, it's probably higher than this, but in this photo at 11 a.m., there was 83% utilization. So at 4 p.m., it's likely higher. And then on East Walnut Street, 72% utilization. So we're seeing a pattern here. 100 block of South Center, this is the Fountain to the Paramount. In this photo, again, there are fewer spaces. There were 11 vehicles that remained in the same space and 1 trailer. And they were there for more than 3 hours and 86% utilization. So again, that's more than was predicted and projected by that 2017 parking study. Now we're going to look at some parking lots. So these were taken at the same time. I want you to have the comparison of the utilization on the street versus the utilization in the parking lot. The City Hall lots we know are typically full because of the staff. We have more than 60 staff that work in City Hall. So that was 85% full at the time of the photo. John Street parking lot, 38% full. Waynesboro lot, 48% full.
What time
And
was
again,
the
this is
photo?
at 11 a.m. And then this is the View parking lot. So these are private lots, but I'm showing you this because one of the areas where behavior really needs to shift is on West Walnut Street. The View is the new residential development that added 63 units to downtown, a great economic boost. With that means more residents, which is also wonderful. And the developer purchased and upfit this parking lot, but you can see there are 3 cars in that parking lot, so 7% full. That's at the same time that West Walnut Street was 83% full. And then the North James Street lot, this is the lot that I think you brought up at the last meeting. So I just wanted to get a snapshot of that as well. It's 13% full in this, and you can see that the use is really around Mulberry Street, where the employees of the spaces are using it as a parking share. Okay, so the next thing we looked at was lighting. We wanted to get a true picture of the lighting in our public lots at 9 p.m. just to give us an idea of whether or not there's work to be done. This is the John Street lot at 9 p.m. at the same time, the same date the other photos were taken. You can see that it has ample lighting. And then in the Waynesboro lot, the lighting is good in most areas, but I think there are some areas of opportunity. This is technically a public lot, but it is owned by the Waynesboro property. So I think that we could work with them to add some updates and enhancements if needed. This is another public lot. This is the JCPenney lot. It's directly behind Breesa's. Primarily, this is used for employee parking in the Breesa's Cry Freedom area. This is at 9 p.m., and you can see that that is well lit as well. And then the private lots, the view, Patrick, your lot is the best lit of all of them. And at 9 p.m., there are 3 cars in the parking lot. Okay. So before or do you want me to go over this slide first before you give your?
I can give some information about, we did reach out to merchants. Specifically, we wanted to understand their position and how they favored it. So when we asked the merchants about it, we had 75% in a survey that said they were for it. 6.3% said they were against it. 18.3% were indifferent, or they had different ideas about using maybe the World parking lot or something like that. So without a doubt, we had an overwhelming majority of the merchants that said they want to see this parking as it's described here implemented.
Excuse me.
Yep.
How many merchants did you ask specifically?
The total number of people that were asked was 41. The merchants were somewhat less. When I did the survey, some of the respondents were employees, and we were specifically looking for the merchants. So when I looked down at just the merchants, it's the 75%. That was about 31 merchants.
Let me add, that's not the number of merchants that was asked. That's the number of merchants that chose to take the survey. And this would be, the 3rd or 4th input opportunity that we've provided.
And I would say the bulk of those people, and I have all the data for anybody that wants it, the bulk of those merchants are in this core area, the Center, Walnut, Mulberry area. They're not way over on John Street or somewhere else like that. They're mostly in the core area. So it's a good representation, I feel, of the people that are in the area that we're proposing the parking.
Thank you. Oh,
there was
and
one other,
yeah.
And Aaron touched on this, but I thought this was kind of interesting because I asked the merchants, again, how many employees do you have on a daily basis? So 13 of the 31 said they have 6 to 10 employees per day. So do the math. That's a lot of people, that's a lot of employees parking down there. So they're obviously a stakeholder of it. The other numbers were 6 merchants said 3, 6 merchants said 2, 2 merchants said 5, and 4 merchants said 1 of the 41. The 31, sorry, of the merchants. So a lot of the people that are down there are employees of the merchants.
I have a question.
Yes.
The view, as you said, one of the new residential properties, of the 7% that are parking there, well, first of all, the question is how much of the occupancy load is occupied at that facility? Is it 100%? Is that building full to capacity as far as room?
I believe it is, or over 90%. Yes.
So of that 7% that's parking there in their parking lot, where are the other 93%?
On the street.
On the street. Okay, so my question is, if these people see a 2-hour parking put in place, just for example, are those people then that don't live in the view that are fearful of paying over 2-hour fine, are they going to then encroach on the view's property and take their parking? And if so, then how will we mitigate that?
Well, it is a private lot, but that would be something that we address as the need comes.
Mm-hmm.
But there are there is a public lot 100 feet away from that lot. So where's my map? That's a great question. And this is,
The green lot on James, it's a very nice lot.
So that's about a football field away.
right.
A lot of walking.
Well, it's very close to
Closer
the
to
corner.
the view, right?
It is closer to the view. It's very close to the corner of Walnut and James. So there's ample public parking close to that if that does become a problem. And this is something certainly that we will need to continue to analyze and make adjustments as needed. But again, what we're proposing is reinstating something that we've already done, utilizing language that's already in our ordinance, and really with the goal of just encouraging turnover. Because again, turnover is the thing that benefits everyone. So let me get to my parking management
I have a
options.
question
Yes,
about,
ma'am.
The view and the parking. What encouragement and incentives have been done to get the people that live at the view to park in their parking space?
I think Patrick can speak to that when, yeah, would you like to?
I'd love to.
Okay, come on up.
Unfortunately, the answer is without public enforcement, they're not going to do it. They just won't. We ask them to, but they're tenants, and it's public parking. That we can't make the view tenants do something that the rest of the public's not going to do. That's why we're supportive of this recommendation. We own multiple properties in multiple downtown areas. We bought this parking lot with the contention that there was going to come a day when there was going to be public enforcement of this policy. And that's really the only way these residents are going to do what we would naturally like them to do, which is use the parking lot that we buy and we light. The other gentleman brought up a good point about what happens when people start using that lot. We're going to have to enforce towing people, and we're going to be doing it and doing it and doing it for probably about a year, and then you're going to break the habit of what people are not going to like. So this change in policy really isn't going to make things easier for us. It's not going to make us any friends in the short term, but I've done this for a number of years in a number of different communities, and I'm 100% confident that Goldsboro's downtown is going to be a better downtown than it already is today when you implement some type of modest program like this that people have time to get used to, and then you just put common sense tweaks to it.
So, question before you leave.
Mm-hmm.
So, is it possible to do what you're saying, do later now? So, is it possible to give your residents stickers, and if those residents are found on the streets, then
Right.
they get towed versus towing people who are found in your parking lot?
We won't be in favor of that because then that singles out our residents for something different than the
You can't tell
public.
them for parking on the street any more than you can
No.
someone else.
I was just asking a question because we talked about stickers before.
But did you
so.
plan on making your lot only for your
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it
people?
already is, and we're going to have to get more
states
signs.
that
up.
on the sign?
Mhm. Well, it should, I think there is a sign that says that, but we also have stickers that our tenants already have that get issued. So what'll end up happening is we'll have to paper that parking lot with no parking signs, and you will be towed, and we'll get a good towing company and get them
How many
to make a
spots
little
are
bit of
there?
money. We have like
55.
55.
And-
We have more spots than we have bedrooms there.
So they already have stickers.
Hmm?
They already have stickers.
Yes, ma'am.
But the stickers only work.
But they work
if
for
there
us to park there, not to get towed.
Right, and the stickers only work if there are regulations on the street. I mean, you can't enforce a sticker if someone can park anywhere they want. It's still public parking. So, you know, if you give a resident a sticker that says they can park in that private lot, they're not going to put it on their car. And I'm not singling out your residents. It's human nature. You know, I did the same thing when I put the sticker on my car. But when I was at ECU, my parking lot was miles from campus. And if a student didn't want to utilize that, they're not going to put that sticker on their car. It's going to call them right out. So the sticker only works when you're regulating parking.
Yes, selfishly for us, if there was no change to the parking, we'd be fine. It doesn't impact us in any way. But as a good neighbor and a long-term investor that they're going to be here in this community and good stewards in the community, we want to do what's right for Goldsboro. And that's why I was glad to participate in the process going through this. Like I said, I've done this in multiple downtowns. It's unusual to have a downtown that's as thriving as Goldsboro's that does not have a parking enforcement plan in place. That is an outlier. It really is.
I got one. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I just want to touch on, I frequent downtown Wilmington all the time, which, as you know, they have a problem with parking because of the infrastructure work they're doing. One of the main reasons I stay at the Ballast Hotel is because I get a hangar that I can park in that Ballast Hotel parking lot and not get a ticket on the street. So I'm guessing what I'm saying is the same analogy I'm using with the Ballast Hotel and me parking in that specific parking lot where they have Crate and Barrel restaurant and all that, which they don't have a hangar. I do. It promotes me to stay there because I know that I will be protected from having a ticket or having to pay hourly rate. So I guess what I'm saying, and to kind of piggyback on what Councilman Matthews said, we can't necessarily tow people in the street, but we can enforce the people that are, I mean, seemingly the problem is 93% of your tenants are taking up the street parking. That's the big problem, right?
Maybe.
Not possibly.
Maybe.
So 7% are in that parking space. 93 said almost at 100% capacity. So the other people that have vehicles are just parking possibly in these other areas. So I guess with the sticker, the hanger, window hanger or mirror hanger, that to me seems like the biggest part of the parking problem. To me, I could be wrong. I'm not an analyst.
I don't think that I'm not an attorney, but I don't know if you
Right.
can make public parking not public to residents of my property. That doesn't sound like that's going to fly in any court. So I wouldn't think of it like that. Also, my people are going to take the stickers off then, and they're not going to have them on their cars. So, like if
And
you
he's
just-
one property owner, and
Right.
there's a concentration of uses on that corner specifically. So you've got a county building right next to it. They have a lot, but it's probably closer to park on the street. So, he's one property owner, there are many. And as we demonstrated through our data, there are many owners of businesses that have 6 to 10 plus employees that are likely parking on the street as well. It's difficult to pinpoint the specific users in each area, but the importance in policy making is to, one, kind of start simple, right? But two, adopt a policy that has longevity, that doesn't just benefit one group or individual, but it benefits all. So I think that's what the city department heads are trying to get at with their regulation language, is that, while it's not going to be a silver bullet, it's not going to fix all parking concerns, it's going to start to manage parking, change behavior, and encourage turnover, which again is the most important element that we're looking at. So, thank you, Patrick.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so parking management options. One of the things that we were tasked with was to come back with some additional options. So we go from, the most expensive to the least expensive. And I only included the parking garage in here just to put a number to the parking garage idea. There's been a lot of discussion about adding a parking garage, which is very, very expensive. We estimate that by adding 200 spaces to a parking garage, it's about a $6 million investment. And what we've demonstrated through the visuals and the data that we've given you is that there's still going to be walking involved. If residents, business owners, employees, and the like are not using parking lots now, they're not going to use a parking garage either. So that could be a future management option, but I think it would be as part of a large-scale economic development project. The next option is the option that city staff and the parking consultant have proposed, which is 2-hour parking Monday through Saturday, 8:30 a.m. to 5:30 p.m., again during business hours. Center Street, Ashta Chestnut, Mulberry, John D. James, and Walnut, John D. James. The cost for this is really in signage. So the estimate for signage is between $4,000 and $8,000, which we can absorb through our budget. And then the staffing cost is absorbed through existing or vacant positions, either in PD or code enforcement. Does this resolve parking concerns? Yes, according to the parking consultant, it resolves the need for turnover in key areas, and flexibility remains after business hours. And again, this is not a new concept. This is utilizing ordinances that are already on our books. The next option is 2-hour parking management with the same time frame on Walnut and Mulberry only from John to James. The signage cost is less. Does this resolve our parking concerns? Yes and no. We demonstrated through the data that there is a significant need for turnover on Center Street that's not being addressed, and it will potentially be exacerbated if you only focus on those side streets. And lastly is postponing enforcement. There's no cost to the city, but does this resolve our concerns? No. So what we know is that adding more parking will not solve our prevalent concerns. We do not have a quantity problem, as we've demonstrated, but a use problem, and ultimately this affects turnover, which is our greatest concern. Lack of turnover, again, as I've said, affects all parties, hence the need for management. Finally, you've heard the survey information from Greg, which I think is telling. You know, we've been asked, do the merchants want this? And that has been demonstrated through public input, but it's also been demonstrated through this merchant survey. So I hope that you can see, as we have seen through the data, why this is important and why it's needed downtown. And again, I hope that you can see, as we have seen, how our needs have surpassed what the parking study called for in 2017. Growth, as we hope, will surely continue, and now is the time for enforcement. This is the feasible next step. That is the next step that was called for by the 2017 study, and then I hope through the data that we've collected you can see that. Now lastly, I'd like to invite Kimber Roche to come and speak on behalf of the merchants. Kimber, you want to come on up?
Good evening, ma'am.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council members. My name is Kimber Roche, and our family business, Rye Always Fresh, is located at 108 East Mulberry Street. We support a downtown Goldsboro parking plan. Since 2017, our business has been engaged and involved with both Downtown Goldsboro Merchants Association and DGDC Board. I currently serve as the Merchant Committee Chair. It has been a great opportunity to collaborate with all downtown stakeholders on a daily and weekly basis to discuss opportunities, challenges, problem solving, and solutions. So tonight, I stand on behalf of all downtown stakeholders, our downtown merchants, merchant employees, commercial property owners, investors, residents, and more importantly, our clients, customers, shoppers, guests, and visitors. Historic downtown Goldsboro has grown significantly over the past 5 years in new and expanded businesses, creating new jobs and residential living, both short and long term, creating a diverse, vibrant, and unique ecosystem full of history that is thriving 24/7. Because of that, we are becoming a destination for shopping, entertainment, performing arts, and culinary arts, and so much more. We believe it's critically important to prepare our accredited North Carolina Main Street community for economic development and growth to ensure sustainability, not just today, but for our future. We collectively are the economic drivers and the heart of our beloved city of Goldsboro. We support the reinstatement of a 2-hour parking signage as stated in the City of Goldsboro City Ordinance 72.26, which would allow for awareness, education, and turnover for on-street parking and a welcome mat for our clients, customers, shoppers, visitors, and guests. Also, utilization of public parking lots. We don't have a capacity issue, but rather a public parking utilization. We also support established parking guidelines for employees and residents, who are also very important downtown Goldsboro stakeholders. Through the DGGC Merchant Committee, in collaboration with Downtown Development Office, we have strengthened a pipeline of communication and consensus of what is important to manage, of why it's important to manage assets and resources through a downtown parking plan. It's a simple fact of life. All downtown Goldsboro stakeholders are obsessed with parking as close as they can to their final destination, be it residence, work, shopping, dining, or entertainment. This desire leads to unpleasant encounters amongst merchants and residents, sometimes aggressive and contentious. We believe through the development of a comprehensive downtown parking plan, which is designed for all downtown stakeholders to include assessing lighting, safety, and ADA compliance, we can mitigate frustration and create a beautiful, friendly, and welcoming, walkable, and healthy 22 square block downtown Goldsboro community. While we don't have all the answers, we do like to work towards solutions and believe it's now time for call to action and next steps.
I have a question, a comment. I really have some concerns. I think 2-hour parking is good, but have you also spoken with the barber shop and the beauty shop? 2 hours, there is a young lady that has a beauty shop there, and once you get in the beauty shop, your head is under there, trying to get your hair done, perm, or whatever you do, weaves or whatever. No one wants to stop and go and move your car. Now that is one of my biggest concerns. I've spoken with people there, and there are a lot of elderly women that get their hair done on Walnut Street, and they have been parking off street. She's having to walk with them back to her salon. I don't know how long it takes hair to get done or whatever, but I know that I would not want to be under a dryer and my 2 hours is up and then I have to run. Those are concerns that I have as well. I want to be fair for all the merchants. And I support, moving the traffic, moving the parking, but I still think that we need to think about those people as well. There's also a barber shop there as well. And some people are in and out, quicker than at the beauty shop. But have you spoken with that young lady and talked about her concerns that she has? Because I have.
Sure, we have. We have several salons downtown Goldsboro, as well as spas. We also have a business called Paint and Play that's located on Mulberry Street. In his particular business, they're all have the same challenge, is that most of their clients can come and stay for 2 to 4 hours. And so we know that, and as women, we know that. And so we talked about possible options. So we have options that we can recommend, but that would obviously be the decision of the city. And so some of those options are, if you have a client that you know is going to need more than 2 hours, you could establish a system within your business and perhaps create a placard of sorts. And they can come in at the beginning of their appointment, get the placard, and then put it on in their car. The other option would be to utilize the public parking lots. So I know when I go to the salon, I can be there for 2 to 4 hours. And we all have that challenge. I mean, we all experience that. And so we have to make the best decisions that we can with the resources that we have. And with that, we have to find public parking. So it's definitely a cultural change. It's definitely a paradigm shift of the way we think. But every city is challenged with this, and there are solutions. We just have to figure out solutions that works for the greater good.
Yes, and see, that's what I would like to see, solutions for everyone.
Absolutely.
On that street. Mm-hmm. So if we have options or solutions that can be used to help the elderly that are getting their hair done, not elderly, some young people, sometimes it's 2 and 3 and 4 hours. Some women stay all day. I can't take it, but so right. we need to come up with.
And those are all valid, and we've had conversations with all of our merchants who have those specific needs, and that's why it's so important that we evaluate the public parking lots and their utilization and their close proximity to businesses, so that we can help educate our merchants that you do have options. Another issue that has come up.
Can I add to that really quick?
Yeah, sure.
Sorry. I think the greatest solution for someone that, like you're saying, they're parking on Walnut Street, they would prefer to park right in front of their business. But the greatest solution, particularly for elderly, let's use them as an example, is turnover, right? Currently, if they're driving on Walnut Street, they're not likely to find a spot in front of the salon or the barbershop now. And as you said, they're utilizing off-street parking currently. So turnover is definitely going to help navigate that concern. We can also look at adding some handicap spaces on street.
Okay.
I think we could work with engineering to determine where we could put curb cuts. I think that's definitely a solution. I would encourage us to kind of shy away from specific solutions for specific businesses, because that gets back to the discussions that we
agree.
had about Mr. Riley's property. And you really have to look at the greater good. And while I would love to find a solution or a management option that benefits everyone, we have the responsibility to determine possibilities that can benefit the most. And then we can flex as we determine that there are specific issues in certain areas. We can make adjustments. So again, my recommendation and the city staff's recommendation would be to utilize what we already have on the books, which is that 2-hour parking. But I do think that handicap spaces, I think we could add those, definitely.
Without question, I think.
Yeah.
It needs to be like they need to be like in the works,
Yes.
like putting it down. You know, aside from our discussion today, like I think handicap spaces need to be downtown somewhere.
Yep, I agree.
And on that point, we already have the ADA accessible corner cuts, and so there's a logical thing. If you're looking on the aerials, there's logical placements in place, and so being able to look at the needs of the individual blocks. I feel strongly that y'all in engineering can do this.
Could I invite one more speaker if you don't mind? So we heard from Mr. Riley. I would love Mr. Wheel. Mr. Wheel. If I could put you on the spot, I would love to hear from you, from your perspective as a property owner that has 80 units, right at the intersection of Walnut and Center Street.
You did put me on the spot. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and council members. I came to Goldsboro from Chapel Hill, graduated 66 years ago. It's hard for me to believe, 66 years. And in that 66 years, I've never had an office further from the Center and Walnut Street fountain than 200 yards. That shows a remarkable lack of imagination, in my opinion. But I have seen downtown when it was vibrant, and I've seen downtown when it was a disaster. I came here last Saturday to see the musical Susical at the Paramount. I came at 6 o'clock for a 7:30 performance. I have not seen in my 66 years more people in downtown Goldsboro than there were on Saturday. Every bench was full. The restaurant seating areas outside were full. People were just circling the blocks there. I thought it was wonderful. And I thank the council for the investment that you've made in downtown that has largely made this possible. What's changed in 66 years is approximately 200 apartments in the 4 blocks that surround that Center and Walnut Street. And the other thing that's changed in 66 years is people have gotten more surly. When I purchased and converted the Waynesboro house into 80 apartments 47 years ago, the people who lived there were very appreciative of the parking lot. I had 70 spaces. Everybody had a place that they could park. As time went on, that didn't satisfy a handful of our residents who insist on parking on the street. I provide enough parking for the people who live in my building, and I provide enough parking for my employees. I urge them individually and as a group to use the parking lot, but people just have their own mind about how it is. We need parking rules, and we need limited enforcement, and I very much endorse it and hope that you'll find a way to put it into effect. Thank you. Thanks, sir.
Thank you. That's perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, that's the conclusion of our presentation. Can I answer any more questions? Oh, yeah, I did want to point out there are a number of merchants that are here to show their support of the 2-hour parking regulations as well. If you guys want to raise your hands that you're here, okay. Yep, and owners and the like. So, all right, thank you.
Thank you.
So before you leave, we have been, the councils, this council and the previous council that I served on, have been speaking of this issue now for 8 years. And it's time that this council make a decision. We're either going to take one of these options here and implement some type of managed program, or we're going to go to item number 4, option number 4, and do nothing. And if we do nothing, that's it. I hope that's not the case. So I would urge the council to really consider tonight what avenue we're going to take.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make the motion that the council adopt the staff recommendation of 2-hour parking in the designated areas. And in the areas Center Street, Ash to Chestnut, Mulberry, John to James, Walnut, John to James, the second option.
Second option.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion?
I
I
would
have
like.
a question.
Sure.
I have a question. I seconded that, but I do have a question. In regards to the placarding system that we spoke about for the beauty and hair shops, what will that play into the 2-hour rule that they are given a placard? That's my only concern. Will that override the 2-hour if they have this signage for the beauty salon / barbershop? How would that work?
Theoretically, yes.
Okay.
We would look at other communities that are doing that if that's something that you'd really like to hear more about. We'd have to update our ordinances
Sure.
to accommodate that.
Okay.
Again, I encourage us to think through going with the standard, which is a community standard across the country of 2 hours. But I will absolutely do the research. That solution came from a property owner who's seen it in other communities.
Yes, ma'am.
I have some concerns about how that might be abused, and I just want to make sure that it's utilized fairly. And if you do it for one, then you're likely going to be called to do it for all. So that makes me a little bit nervous. But I will absolutely do the research and bring it back to you.
Well, that's my concern. I have no problem with agreeing with motion, but I want to make sure that we incorporate the placard and the options and the handicap. And with that, I'm pleased because I feel like we've had it's a happy meeting.
Yes, ma'am. So, I think my only thing is, well, not my only thing, but when we're trying to move something forward, we tend to find voices that are in favor for the thing that we're trying to do. And we did a lot of that tonight, and we've done a lot of that in having this discussion that I've just been a part of as sitting on the council. We didn't include a lot of the feedback that came back from our public hearing that we had about this, where the majority of those individuals who were stakeholders said that this is not an issue, and the presentation that was presented does not differ from what we've been trying to move forward, that they didn't agree with that plan. So my thing is, if we have, which looked like, this is just me making an assumption, and I think all of us can assume who's taking up the parking spots, but it looks like it's an employee issue, because I've heard several times it's not a capacity issue, it's a use issue. And in going back over the parking study over the weekend, and it talked about the campaigns that we could do, and you guys have said you've done that. And I would like to see what that looked like. I don't even feel like I'm capable of making a decision tonight, because a lot of the merchants that have been down here for years don't remember those campaigns. They don't remember the incentives that the parking study talked about. And they were, some good incentives. The education piece of it goes beyond just the merchants, because now I'm questioning, if we do 75% of people who agree, who was in the room? Because we can't just say it primarily affects the folks on Center Street, because what happens is you're going to start moving people out. And now my business, I don't have a business no more, but I'm just speaking hypothetically. Now my business is on one of those side streets that's now going to get hammered, and now my folks don't have a place to park. We've had merchants to come up here and say they encourage their employees to get the best part, get it out front. We've had merchants to say, I wouldn't dare for a second park in that view parking lot. So we expect the residents to park in that parking spot, but we ourselves wouldn't even park in that parking spot. So, I feel like there's so many other options that we missed out on to really make an impact and to be beneficial to everybody. And we say everybody, but it just sounds like it doesn't sound like that's what we're doing primarily, and I don't think enough of the stakeholders have had an input. I think just enough that want to do this are being presented and represented here during the presentation. But I would love to see that campaign, because I've seen other cities do it. That while we all talk about we want it to be a walkable downtown, but that's not really what we're doing. That's not what we're doing. We're not making it a walkable downtown. In terms of the turnover possibility. I mean, that's just me. That's just my argument. Just one voice, but I've talked to merchants. I've talked to shoppers. I'm a shopper downtown. Laughing Owl and the Ice Storm are two of my favorite places. And I'm in there well over 2 hours. Me and my mom sat outside the Laughing Owl the other night after we left the Paramount for the senior event. And we stayed down there 3.5, 4 hours sitting outside. So, but you know where we had to park? We were okay with parking out because we just realized that that's just what happens when you go downtown. You just have to be willing to walk a little bit.
Right. But you can see that you're not in the majority. As we demonstrated with the turnover, there are a lot of individuals that choose to park on the street. And again, the spaces within this proposed footprint only represent 9% of the total parking. So, and I do want to remind you that education is a key part of that study, and education is not going to stop. We have had a street captains program that Kimber helped lead through the Merchants Association that's been going on in different forms for about 5 or 6 years, and parking is always at the top of that list, along with trash and some other things. So we will continue to educate, we'll continue to add signage, we'll continue to talk about this on social media. And again, we also mentioned the recommendation is courtesy tickets first. So that really is important in the behavior shift. But this survey is also the third attempt to gather public input. So remember that at the January public forum, there were over 50 participants, and that was open to the public. It went out in the water bills. It was in the newspaper. It was advertised everywhere. So there have been ample opportunities to hear from merchants, and then Greg, Kimber have been going door to door to talk to folks about this, get their input, ask them to fill out a survey. So there have been plenty of opportunities for input. I just encourage us to think about the full spectrum of input opportunities that we've put out there. But again, education is not going to stop.
And I would say to your point that it's always going to keep going. I mean, this is a never-ending. Talk to any parking expert. It's never-ending. It's always education, information, trying to change behaviors to walking. That would solve so many of the problems. And it will as they get kind of nudged in that direction with some enforcement. So, in that direction.
One last thing, Mayor, I'm sorry. The enforcement part of it, because I don't know if I missed that part, but I'm assuming that, I think you mentioned the Goldsboro Police Department and then code enforcement. It's just a hard sell for me to take our officers, who we are already well understaffed, to now be parking police in a sense. Because in my mind, who's going to say your 2 hours is up? Who's going to be watching that enough to say your 2 hours is up and now we're going to cite you, or we're going to have to call the police who we can't even get into our schools because we're understaffed to protect our kids. And now they're going to be moved downtown for parking stuff. Right.
I definitely understand. Currently, there are 2 departments that have the ability to manage parking. That's the police department and code enforcement. Both understand their role in this, and initially, the response is going to be complaint-based, and as we build up our manpower, we'll really start to push more towards having that, those boots on the ground that are doing this on a regular basis. This, in the beginning, is about education. Once the signs go up, it's going to take a lot of time to make sure that we are ready to roll out and that the public is ready to be enforced with 2-hour parking. So internally, we're going to have those conversations, but we know that there are 2 departments that have the ability to do that now. And honestly, when the police department is ready, we've heard from merchants that have said, I love that, because that encourages more visibility of our police officers on the street, walking up and down Center, Walnut, and Chestnut, or Mulberry. So I hear you and I agree. I mean, we definitely have a need for additional staffing, and that's not going to go away anytime soon. So initially be complaint-based, and then we'll kind of scale up to greater enforcement.
Any other discussion? Here we have a motion and a second. I'm going to read the option just for clarity here that was made. It's the second item on the options to implement a 2-hour parking Monday through Saturday from 8:30 to 5:30 p.m. bordered by Center Street from Ash to Chestnut, Mulberry Street from John to James, Walnut Street from John to James. That's the motion. All in favor of the motion signify by raising your hand. All opposed? You got the? Okay, the motion carries.
Thank you. Sorry to take up so much of your time.
Thank you. Okay, at this time we'll move to the next item on the old business, which is distributions and collections division valve truck purchase from Public Works. Good evening, sir.
Good evening, Mayor,
Thank
Council.
you all for coming. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. As you said, I'm here to give a brief update on the purchase of the distribution collections valve truck. Quick background, the valve truck is comprised of a chassis and valve maintenance service body. It was authorized to be purchased in the FY21 budget, but has been repeatedly delayed due to the shortage of F550 chassis available. Staff have worked diligently with the Ford dealership and even tried to locate used F-150s as a suitable sub. Most recent efforts included even trying to find suitable chassis in other makes and models like a Dodge 5500, but they also fell short. The lack of chassis has also delayed the manufacturing installation of the valve maintenance service body by E.H. Wachs, and valve maintenance service body. The service body has increased from $138,271 to $159,371, and the chassis has increased from $52,196 to $62,953 for a combined total of just over $31,000, $31,847. The valve truck is an essential piece of equipment needed to maintain the city's water distribution system. Public Works currently has funds in the distributions and collections budget to transfer from the operational supplies budget line item and cover the increased costs without transferring funds from the utility fund balance or capital reserve fund. The recommendation, staff recommends that city manager approve the utility fund transfer of $31,847.43 from operational supplies to purchase the valve truck for $222,314.75.
Anyone have any questions?
Yes,
I'll just add this. It's not so much a question as it is just a sympathy and kind of a hats off to you. A former colleague of mine in a different city has been trying to buy a Ford F-350 for somewhere around 18 months and has had multiple new orders with deposits made canceled. It's insane trying to buy, and for them it's just a haul vehicle. It's work, but it's a haul vehicle. I'll just echo that what Rick is saying is 100% true. Anything 350 or above right now, they don't exist on the market.
further comments or questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rick.
Thank you, Rick.
Okay,
We could have moved the money around within the department, but I wanted y'all to be aware of kind of the situation we're at and what those costs are.
at this time we'll go into the new business, and first item on the new business is Community Relations Department name change proposal.
Yes, sir. The next item is pretty simple. I'm proposing we change the name from the Community Relations Department to the Community Relations and Development Department to reflect the HUD funding responsibilities for CDBG and home funds. This will also align it with the name of the Commission on Community Relations and Development. So if council, if I have general concurrence, we'll do that officially.
I have a question. I hear what you're saying, but when you change it to, let me find it. When you change it to community relations, when you change it to the developmental, what does that really do? Does that mean that you are in an attempt to separate the two?
No, ma'am. It's just a name change. Right now, Felicia's department is responsible not only for community relations events, but they're also responsible for HUD funding, community development, CDBG, and home funding. That's just not reflected in the name right now. It's never been changed from community relations to community relations and development. So that would reflect what they're actually doing.
Okay.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you. Next item is a property tax update. We have Mr. Alan Lumpkin here from the Wayne County Tax Administrator's Office.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. How are y'all?
Good.
Good. My name is Alan Lumpkin, and I'm a lifelong Wayne County resident, and I've been with the tax department 31 years. I did have hair, and it was pretty brown when I started, but you see what the tax business does to you now. Just want to give you a brief update, since it is budget time, on sort of what property taxes are doing right now for the county and the city of Goldsboro. Let's see, Miss Laura, which way did this thing go? That way. All right. I was wondering when I put this together, I'm trying to cram a 2-day workshop into 15 minutes. So I tried to do the best I could. I was trying to think out where to start with this. So I decided to back up about 4 years to our last reappraisal, which happened in January 1st, 2019. Our reappraisal, it is mandated by the North Carolina statutes. All 100 counties must do a reappraisal at least every 8 years. We have to revalue all properties in the county and bring it to current market value as of that date. It must be every 8 years. It can be sooner. Some of our larger counties, our coastal and resort counties in the mountains, have actually chosen to do it a little sooner than that because the change in market has been so abrupt over the years. What this reval does, not only does it bring everything to market value, it equalizes the distribution of taxes or the paying of taxes. We have several classes of property: residential, commercial, and industrial. During that 8-year cycle, these properties grow at different rates. So we do this revaluation to get it back in line so everybody's paying their fair share or to equalize the values. And like I said, our last reappraisal was 2019. This is an important bullet point right here, the last one. We must use 2019 schedule of values. When we do a reappraisal, we have to have what we call our Bible. It's a schedule of values. It is the cost, and it has all kind of base rates in there, it has depreciation in there, and everything to do with valuing property. Once we establish that as of that date, that's our Bible for the next 8 years. And to break that down is a good example. If I had a brand new house I purchased in 2019 for $200,000, today I went out and somebody down the road has that same house built in 2023, identical house, same house plans, same square footage, everything. They paid $300,000 for their house because of inflation and everything, all the costs went up. Well, as a tax department, I can't value the house at $300,000. I have to stick with our values we established at the reevaluation time, which was $200,000. So these people are paying the same property taxes during the same cycle. Reevaluation comes along, and that's when we equalize everything. Everybody goes to the same value at that time. But it would be fair to that person in 2019 to pay on $200,000 and this one to pay on $300,000 just because of a few years difference in time. So that's the important part there. We're stuck with those values and costs that were established as of that date. The next step in this process is one that the Department of Revenue dictates. It's called a sales ratio study. We have to perform this annually. And what they do is they send us a random sampling of deeds that have transferred during the year. We have to go check those sales. We compare the selling prices with our tax values and establish a % difference in those two numbers. The important part of this is this shows them where we are in our schedule as far as the schedule of values. And I'll get to that in just a little bit. But currently, right now, as of 2023, as of about 2 weeks ago, we received our sales ratio study results, and we're at 69.98%. That means we're about 30% below what market value is. Our tax values are here, markets here about 30% higher. And you'll see here on the slides that going back to 2019, we did a good job. We were 100% of our market. That's the goal, to get market and tax at the same value, 100%. But you can see 2020 went to 98.14, 2021 fell to 94.45, 2022 went to 83.35. Okay, so you can see the trend there. Taxes here, The market's going up, and making that bigger difference. A little caveat there that established about 4 years ago, I think, the sales ratio study. For any counties that have a population over 75,000, if your sales ratio drop on the fourth year, or any time actually, not just the fourth year, if it drops below 85%, or if the market's going the other way and exceeds 115%, it triggers a reappraisal. So what has happened to us is, you see in 2022, we went to 83.35. That triggered a reappraisal for us last year. So we have 3 years to do a reappraisal. So instead of doing one in 1/1/27, like we were planning doing, the 8-year cycle, we're going to a 6-year reval. It's going to go into effect 1/1/25 because of this process right here. So our next appraisal is 1/1/2025. Revenue neutral is a term you'll probably hear your city manager and your finance director mention a lot in the upcoming years. What that means is, when we do a reappraisal, always our values will be adjusted to whatever the market is at that time. So if it would happen right now, your market will probably go up about 30%. That's an average county-wide, so it will vary. But your market will go up about 30%. What revenue neutral means is, what rate would you have to charge as a council to get that same amount of money that you had last year? Your value went up, so your rates need to go down substantially to offset that. So revenue neutral is the rate you would set to generate the same amount of money with this new values that you've got now. So you're going to hear that term coming up probably in the next year or two. Okay, here's some numbers for you. Sort of sheds a little light on it. Property types. We have our major property types are real property. That's your land, your buildings, any improvements like that. Our personal property will be boats, jet skis, mobile homes, business personal property. Like if you own a business, you have to list your machinery equipment, your computers, your furniture and fixtures, anything like that you list for taxes. That's what we consider personal property. That's a depreciable asset. They depreciate annually. Public service companies are your Duke Energies, your railroad companies, your cable companies, anything like that. Those values are actually sent to us from the state Department of Revenue each year. They establish those values for us. So that's another type of property. Then we have our registered motor vehicles, and that's done now through DMV. When you renew your tags, you pay your property taxes at that time. So just looking at these are City of Goldsboro values of the last 4 years. 2019 to 2020, you see your real property value, your personal property, your public service, and your total. I'm not going to read all these numbers out to you because you see these, they're on the board. But the main thing to look at this slide is to look at your percent changes. So if you go over to real property change, you can see your real property changes. It goes up each year, but little small increments. It doesn't change a lot. Like I told you, I can't recognize those new increases in value right now. All I can do is pick up new stuff. If somebody builds a new house, I can pick it up, but still at the 19 value. So you can see you get some increase in your real property changes. Your personal property changes are more volatile. The reason for that is, like I told you, that's depreciable assets. If companies say don't buy anything new and they just have what they had last year, it's going to depreciate another year. So it actually goes down in value. So unless you have a new business come in or something like that, that potentially can change substantially. If you have a business closed and they move out, all that equipment's gone, it may decrease. So you'll see the personal property change is sort of volatile. The public service, again, it's volatile. It goes up and down. The same thing with them. If their stuff depreciates, they don't buy new assets, then it will depreciate over the years. So that sort of gives you an idea. If we look at the overall percent change, though, you can see it's been a positive every year. In 2021, 22, it'll be just a slight increase. The main thing looking at here in 23, 24, this is our projections. The real property, I feel pretty good about that number. We've picked up all our new construction that happened during 2022. We picked up that. That's a pretty solid number right there. It may change a little bit, but not a lot. The personal property, the business personal especially, when businesses list their personal property, it has to be done in the month of January, but businesses can actually ask for an extension through April 15th. So we've just got a bulk of that stuff in right now. We're keying right now, but it looks like we're going to have a pretty good increase in the business personal property section. And we're estimating that number to be a little bit higher. Public service, here's the good thing. Not good thing, it's a crazy thing, but going back to our sales ratio study, that triggers this as well. On the 4th and 7th year during a reappraisal cycle, if your ratio drops below 90%, these public service companies can what we call equalize their values or recognize that depreciation. This is our 4th year. We fell below 90%. We're at 69.98. Their calculation they do at DOR is as they factor in some personal property with that, so it's actually going to be around 75%. So we're losing 25% of our public service values. When I say we, you, the county, not all our free by everybody. The whole county and municipalities lose 25% of that public service value this year. It's a one-time deal, 4th and 7th year. The 7th won't hurt us this time because we're doing a rebound the 6th year. So that won't affect us. So if we get through this year, next year will be pretty flat unless they have new growth, and then we'll have our reappraisal, so we'll be back in good graces on that. But I just wanted to share that with you on that. That's why that negative 25% is on that public service change there. So looking at this, again, your overall growth is growing. It's just not growing a lot. So, you got 0.81% growth proposed, possibly, on that slide there. The crystal ball is really fuzzy right now. The economy, as you know, you read the papers, who knows? One week we're in a recession, next week we're not. We don't know what's going to happen. If things hold like they're going now, even if they flatten out and level out, some which they are some now, construction is slowing down a little bit right now. But if these values hold and they don't really go way up anymore, we're still looking at a pretty good increase of reappraisal time. If we can get through this year and next year, we use sales from the last half of this year and all of next year to establish our market. So if everything holds like it's going right now, then we're looking at a pretty good increase in 2025. It will be effective 1/1/2025, but it'll be on the bills we sent out in August of 25. So this is a 25-26. We're talking about reval. So we got 2 more years to get through, this year and next year, before we reach that change. Now, bad news is if the bottom falls out, if we do go into a full-blown recession, and it happens like back in 2008, 9, and 10, when the bottom falls out, we may not see any change potentially. We may see a decrease. We've had a lot of counties, especially coastal counties and resort areas, when they hit back in 8, 9, and 10, they actually had losses in the reval. Their values went down during the reappraisal. So that's a possibility. I don't think it's going to happen. I'll give you a good example, just very quick. We did a revaluation in 95, and we did one in 2003. In 2000, I think there was a 36% increase from 95 to 2003. And yes, I was here for those two. 2003 to 2011, well, 2003, 4, 5, 6, and 7, those values were still going up. The bottom falls out. Everything's coming down. 2011 hits, and we do a reappraisal. Well, based on the current sales and everything, we actually ended up with a 16% increase from 03 to 11. You're talking about calls and fussing and care. How can you do this? Hadn't you read the paper? The world's gone to the end. I mean, how can you raise my values? But we had to explain it. It went way up again to probably 30-some%, but then it came down, but it didn't never come back to 2003 levels. So it was hard to explain the 8-year cycle because people relate a change to a 1-year change, but it's an 8-year change. So that's just an example of how things can fluctuate and come out on that. We got a couple new things coming in. As you know, SPX closed. All that equipment went away. That probably has something to do with that change on one of those years on the business personal property. But we got Malapickle coming in. Right now, all we recognize now is the real estate, and it hadn't changed as of right now. It's still the same real estate. Probably during this year, they'll be bringing a lot of equipment and stuff in, and we can recognize that next year when they list it. Anything they do this year, we recognize next year. So you got some stuff on the horizon. You got the new properties out near 581 that are being built now. You got some new stuff coming on, but we just can't recognize it until it's here. It's got to be here January 1st for us to recognize it on the tax books. So, that being said, I've said a lot real fast. I appreciate the time. Do I have any questions? Can I help answer any questions?
I'm going to ask a question. How's the wind blowing on the county area in terms of reducing the valuation period?
I've talked to the manager and the council and the board of commissioners, and my recommendation has been to lower it to a 6-year cycle. I don't think we're ready for a 4 because these counties that do a 4-year cycle, they have to put on a whole other staff. It's a 4-year process, really. It takes you 1.5 years to 2 years to do it. You go through it, you have to go through appeals, and then you have to start the next one. So we'd have to put on probably 8 to 10 new appraisers and a whole staff to even consider doing that. At this time, I don't think we're quite ready for it. We're not a Johnson County or Wake County or Mecklenburg County. We're not that yet, but I do feel like 8 is too long now with the economy, like the ups and downs we're seeing now. So we are leaning toward a 6. This will be a 6 this time, and probably a 6 the next time, unless the commissioners change their mind.
Is that coming up in the FY 23-24 period? The potential change?
No, so we have to do this one right now for 1/1/25.
I see.
And then beyond that will be a 6 year from that point.
I see, okay.
They haven't made that decision yet, though.
No, sir, it has not been made yet.
Good.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Wilkin, if you go back 2 slides, please, your bottom bullet, you were explaining how that there would be a reappraisal of value, but then we would have to adjust the values would then be adjusted down, so it ends up being a revenue neutral thing. Explain how that happens and how long it stays that way.
Okay, you don't have to do anything. You don't have to do anything.
Oh, yes, yeah.
We just have to publish a revenue neutral rate.
Right, okay.
You can establish whatever rate you want, but it has to be published what it would be if you were to go revenue neutral.
Right.
And even with a revenue neutral rate, some people will pay more, some people will pay less, because this is a mass appraisal. And you can't say I'm going to raise everybody 30% because it varies. Some may be 50%, some may be 20%, some may go down. It just depends on the property. So it's just across the board thing. But you just have to announce what it would be, but you don't have to abide by that.
But you can.
But you can, certainly.
I asked Mr. Lumpton to come do this presentation for council because it's extremely important information. As you can imagine, if our valuations are 30% off and our property tax is $18 million, that's $5.4 million that we're short in our general fund revenue to make ends meet. So I'm about to talk about the budget, my initial presentation to you all, and we're going to have to do a few things. But I wanted you to understand this, because when we increase property taxes, if you don't do that every year to keep pace with inflation, you can't afford to pay your bills. That's the bottom line. I don't know if you have anything else to add to that.
No, you're exactly right, because costs have gone up, obviously. We just can't recognize that increase until we do a reappraisal. We just can't randomly say, let's raise the value. We can't do that. So the rate is your only option during this time period. And then hopefully when the values go up, you can lower the rate, and everything sort of settles back down. But right now, we're sort of in that little crunch time.
Anyone else have any questions? Thank you, Mr. Lumpian.
Yes, sir. Thank y'all. I appreciate it.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, that leads us right into the next issue, is our FY 23-24 budget.
So this is my initial presentation here. We can have a further in-depth discussion, obviously, when we do our work sessions after the budget is submitted, the manager's recommendation on May 15th. Let's go to the next slide, please. What I'd like to start with is a slide from last year's budget cycle. We had future general fund concerns at that time. My basic questions were, how do we fund the FY23 pay raises, which were 5% COLA, in the next fiscal year, i.e. the one we're looking at right now or the fiscal years after, when we used $3 million of ARPA funding and we only expected to have $1.4 million of ARPA funding left in FY24, and zero, as it was this upcoming cycle, we expended $1.4 million ARPA funding in 23-24, and then 24 and 25, there would be nothing left. So if you don't increase your tax rates to make up that problem, I'm going to show you what happens. We also talked about, to offset that difference of $1.6 million, in this current budget cycle, I would have to take the 3-cent property tax you did previously, 2 years ago now, which is $750,000, plus I expect an additional 3-cent property tax this year. That would give you $1.5 million. Don't forget we added debt for equipment, and we didn't fund any roads. And we had department offsets in operations and maintenance for 25 or 30%, which hurt you in the long run if you can't afford to fund those things. In FY25, how do we make up that additional $1.4 million of ARPA funding that I've been talking about? Now, as you recall, Catherine basically claimed and utilized all this $8.8 million over the last year plus of ARPA funding in personnel costs, which have paid for personnel and also been supplanted for other things. What I plan on doing in the next budget cycle is pulling $1.5 million forward to help us make ends meet. That's what I'll talk about the next slide. Okay. Revenue assumptions. In the general fund, we were about $15 million short between what department heads requested and the expected revenue, without any tax increases. We cut $10.5 million in requests, which were painful, that I'll talk about here in a minute, and increased revenue $4.5 million. That's the next paragraph below. So if you increase property taxes by 4 cents on $100 valuation, that's about a 6% increase that generates $1.2 million. If we pull $1.5 million of ARPA funding forward, that will also help. We'd still have to take a $1.8 million loan for the current equipment that I left in the budget, because it's not available without taking a loan. And we can't take a loan until we're off the LGC unit assistance list, provided we get our audits updated. Now, we can go back and ask the LGC, and they'll probably do it because I think our finances are showing improvement. But preferably, we get off the UAL and we can take our own loans. And then we're expecting sales tax growth, there's no rate change, of about 5%, or that's $600,600,000, which will help. On the utility fund, I'm recommending water and sewer rate increase of 4%, which is going to keep up with inflation. That generates $1 million. And in the future, we're already looking at reviewing customer contracts and future options of how we can generate additional funding without necessarily having to do it to the average homeowner in the city. We've talked about system development fees. That report is out for a 45-day public comment and review period, which we'll see what comes back. And that is not in the budget right now. It could be if we get it in time and you all want to discuss it, but it doesn't have to be part of the budget. You can change those rates or those fee requirements at any time. So we can do that, say, July or August after we get the budget done if we can't figure out how to do that right now. But we'll take those comments. Those comments are due, I think, the end of May here, and we'll see if we can address them in June or not. Then the stormwater, I'm recommending we do a 1/4 cent increase. That's about 5.5% from $4.50 to $4.75. I think that's about even less than average around here. That would generate $77,000, which will help us do future projects. The occupancy tax remains the same, but we're expecting growth of about 4%, which will generate an additional $38,000. Okay, next slide. Expenditure assumptions. I do believe we need to continue to value our employees, the number one priority. I think a 2% cost of living and a 1% merit increase is appropriate. That's going to cost about $750,000. Right now, I was looking up some Congressional Budget Office personal consumption expenditures. You know, in 2021, it was 5.7% inflation. In 22, it was 5.5%. In 23, we're estimating 3.3%. And in 24, 2.4%. To what degree that happens or not in the future is that crystal ball that was displayed up there. But I think we're in the ballpark with this kind of increase. At the same time, GPD requested, instead of having 20 frozen positions, 15. I think we need to keep it at 20 because we just can't afford it unless you want to do more revenue increases by increasing the tax rate. The Goldsboro Fire Department wanted those 3 positions back. I think we need to continue to freeze those positions, i.e. not fund them. The positions that were requested, I'll talk that in the next slide a little bit, but the ones I think we should approve would be a new engineer admin position. Right now, the current employee that's doing the administration is also doing property management, and she's been with the city for 45 years, so I expect she will retire at some point. Certainly not trying to move her on. She's a great employee, but we have additional requirements with $6 million of ARPA funding that we're going to need to track, and potentially even more ARPA funding going forward. The nurse right now is a contract nurse. The nurse is working 4 days instead of 5 days a week. I think we need to get her 5 days a week, and we've run the numbers to bring her on as an employee is about the same as the contract. The contract prices are increasing. We can get into more detail on that in the budget work sessions when we get a chance. There are 2 permanent part-time positions, one at the Paramount and one at the golf course. I think should be full-time positions. They would be offset by permanent part-time and part-time positions. We can go into more detail on that later on. And then there have been 12 reclassifications that would be recommended. General fund capital, a very little general fund capital here, a public works, solid waste, rear loader, trash truck, and a leaf machine. We all know how many problems we've had with the leaf machines and pickup. GPD vehicles, they requested 16 vehicles. I'm recommending we replace 8, just because of affordability. The IT department has pushed forward for the police department, the mobile data terminals. They're on a 5-year replacement cycle. This would be the 5th year. That's about $600,000 to replace them. We may be able to extend that if we want to do something else or reduce our loan. We can talk a little bit more about that as we get into those budget discussions. The utility fund projects and capital, We previously talked about this. We had lead service line replacement study. Estimate is about $3 million. That was an unfunded mandate laid down to us. There may be some grant loan opportunities, forgiveness out there that we're looking into, but this study essentially has to be done by October 24, so we got to do that this upcoming year. There are some water tank management, we have on contract by that, and some water treatment plant repairs, about $600,000. And a backhoe loader and Bobcat is about $250,000. The stormwater fund, we're looking at $250,000 dump truck. And the occupancy tax fund, I'd like to do $250,000 at the Bryan Multi-Sport Complex. I have a maintenance building out there. It's really more of a shed. But right now our equipment is sitting out in the weather, like a car, taking the beating to whatever degree it does. And we probably need to put it under a roof and maintain it inside. Currently not funded. There were 10 employee positions requested and 7 public works reclassifications we're going to have to take a closer look at in the next budget cycle, I believe, or we can certainly look at it in more detail during the budget discussions. General fund capital, we did not do any street paving. There was about $1.4 million of request there. There was a fire engine request for $0.9 million. City Hall chiller and boiler, $0.8 million. IT network upgrades, $0.6 million. GPD vehicles, the other half I didn't fund, $600,000. A side loader or one-arm trash truck is $400,000 nowadays. Public safety complex chiller, $300,000. GPD radios and cameras, $200,000. We have to look at what level of grants we may be able to get for these things, but there's a lot of things we're not doing here, and this is just at the $200,000 and above level. There's some $100,000 and less items I'm not including here that we can get into once you see that budget submitted on May 15th. General fund projects. The Goldsboro Fire Department put in some nice requests for upgrading their training center. That's about $400,000 for that and some equipment that is not currently funded. There's a planning demolition line for $200,000. We've talked a lot about how we're going to do ordered repair and things for demoing homes that people aren't taking care of to get rid of the blight. I zeroed that out. We don't have any funding for that unless we go use CDBG money for that purpose, which we can do in low to moderate income areas. We have to look at that. There's a comprehensive land use plan that was forwarded by the planning department for $200,000. It is 10 years old. It should be done probably at the 10-year, if not before, point that we couldn't afford. In the last year, the nonprofits were funded at a roughly $160,000 level. My recommendation would be to do $100,000 this year and move $50,000 to support the GWTA request so that we don't have a shortfall there and have to cut back those services. The Herman Park Center demolition is probably going to cost about $200,000. We don't have any funding for that. We're asking for some grant funding to do that. We'll see what comes through there. And again, there's no contingency fund. So unlike this past year where we had some ARPA funding we put into contingencies where we needed some golf carts, we could do that. You can't, it's not available here in this budget. You would have to go to fund balance. For the utility fund, some major projects, we need to upgrade the UV system. That is, if I recall, Bert's not here right now, that was like 20 years old or more, and it should be upgraded before that time, but because of this $3 million unfunded mandate for lead and copper, we can't afford to do that this year. There's also an $8 million Phase 3 sewer project that we've been trying to get ARPA funding for that we did not get. At some point, we need to do that. For the stormwater fund, the projects, we've got 5 known projects out there, probably for over $2 million that we don't have funding for. So that's why I recommended a little bit of an increase there. But we're going to see that study that comes out where they've mapped the lines, and we'll see if there's any requirements additionally for that. They also requested a front-end loader for $300,000 that is not funded. And when it comes to the occupancy tax fund balance, we have about $320,000 in fund balance right now. If you spend $250,000 of that, that leaves you with $70,000. We have requested some grant funding from the state to help upgrade the Bryan Multi-Sport Complex to do lights for different fields. If we can add about $100,000 per field for lighting, you would be able to have more training time at night and more game time on the weekends for travel sports. But we just don't have the funding for that, unless you want to prioritize lights over a shed for the equipment. So manager's recommended budget will be out on May 15th. Council can determine when the work sessions, I'm recommending here, consider May 22nd, a week afterwards, or May 30th and/or both, depending on how much you want to talk about this before the public hearing, which is scheduled June 5th. And then we can adopt the budget on June 20th, and it'll be published by June 30th in accordance with North Carolina general statutes. So, available to answer any questions you may have at this time, but I wanted to get that information out for you to chew on and discuss amongst yourselves or talk to me about as we prepare the final numbers for the manager's recommended budget.
Anyone have any questions of the manager?
I don't have a question, I just have a comment. I know in all of our talks here lately, we've been talking about retention of our employment and our employees. Biggest part of public safety, which the only department I worked in, is equipment and finance. I think, Mr. Rick, we talked about a truck they're getting, what's that cost, $270-something thousand for the valve truck, somewhere in that ballpark, 300?
Yes, sir, 220.
Okay. So just in that one piece of equipment for his department, that shows how much of a difference. A fire truck was just ordered. But if you wait months, not even a year, the price difference is $300,000 just in one piece of apparatus, a differential of $300,000. And the waiting list is about 2 years from the time you order a piece of equipment to the time it's delivered. So I want us to all think about that moving forward in the time we have for the budget. And like I said, retention, because, I mean, I left the department, not due to equipment per se, but we've got trucks, or they have trucks rather, that are 30 years max, that are reserve trucks now, and the reserve trucks are holding up better than the newer trucks, but the problem is you can't get the parts, or they cost so much. So I just want us to be proactive instead of, like I said, kick the can down the road. A lot of this issue stems back to the audit. I mean, we could get a loan, possibly, this type of equipment that have to be paid off within 600 days, which is almost over a year and a half. So we could actually flow into another year's budget with a loan, but we're even prevented from moving forward loan-wise because of what we're facing. So I guess the question is, when will that audit, when will we be clear and understand a lot of these loan companies or whoever deals with loans, even if the audit is late, it prevents us from our status moving forward. So that's the biggest question in my mind, is the status of that moving forward and what we're looking at as far as a clear audit, so that we can be given loans that would defray some of this cost from our direct budget moving forward. So that's my question. Something we need to look at.
What I understand right now is we're pushing to get the FY 21-22 audit done in the August timeframe, give or take, right, depending on how things go. It will probably take us till December, January to get the 23 audit, the current year we're in. Once you get that updated, then you got to go back to the LGC and ask, can I get off the local government, the unit assistance list? How long that takes, we don't know. Hopefully it's fairly quickly. And then we can utilize the loan that I'm talking about for the equipment that I mentioned in the spring. Or we can go back and talk to the LGC and say, we need that equipment now, we need your approval to take that loan.
Any other questions?
Manager, would you run down that timeline for me one more time? For some reason, I thought that it went into 2 different budget years. But I have 2 questions. One, would you redo that timeline for me so I can picture it? And then second, roughly what looking at our finances now, once we're off of it, assuming things basically stay par where they are, what does our debt carrying capacity look like?
Catherine, you got any comments to my accuracy in that timeline?
I agree with the manager. That's kind of what we have laid out. As far as our debt capacity, what we would need to do is engage Davenport to come back, which they do. That's part of the services that they provide, and they would provide a debt capacity update. So just because you have the capacity to borrow doesn't mean that it's financially feasible, because if you don't have enough revenues coming in, you can't make the debt payment. So
Right.
So at this point,
So,
don't
I
really
think-
know. That's putting the cart before
think-
the horse at this time. Okay.
What do we carry, like 11% of our cost of operating our debt? And we could potentially go up more, but again, you got to have the revenue to pay for that debt.
right, that's right. That's really the issue. Is the capacity is not the issue.
Right.
It's just the ability to repay the debt's what the
Yeah.
issue is. Yeah.
Thank you, Ken.
Any other questions? I would encourage the council to take this information that the manager has presented to us tonight and study it. When we come back here on May 15th, we should be prepared to listen to his presentation to us on what they are recommending as a budget. And we then need to set a date that we as a council can have a budget meeting so that we can review the proposed draft budget and make a final recommendation, and so that it goes forward and meets the schedule. I want to say that I've said it before, but I want to say again that our staff, our department heads, our finance director, our manager, assistant manager, and others have worked very diligently in trying to come up with where they are now in this budget process. I have had the privilege of, maybe it's not always a privilege because you hear some negative information when you're going through these numbers, but I've had the opportunity to sit down with the manager and talk about these bullets that he has on this presentation tonight. And some of these are painful for us to look at and listen to, be it what is not funded or what is going to be cut out or what we can expect for revenue figures coming in. But it is what it is, ladies and gentlemen. So I really encourage you to drill down in this information. I'm sure the manager will provide you additional information if you need it, so that when we come back here on the 15th of May, we come here with an educated background to the ability that we are without having the whole budget here in front of us, in order to listen, and then we adopt the date that we meet subsequent to that May 15 meeting and go through the draft budget, and so that we make this a less painful experience, and we meet the deadlines. One final thing. The one thing that we don't want to bother is our fund balance. We all know that our fund balance is the one thing that we have established as our goal here as a 15%. We're not there. We're a good ways away from it. But we need to have a goal that we strive to accomplish. But what we can't do is go back from where we are now. We've struggled mightily in the last year or two to try to bring us up from that really low point that we were at, where we had our credit cut off and so forth and so on. So let's don't even think about attacking our fund balance to make up some of these shortfalls. That's all I have. It's getting near about 9 minutes till the hour. Mr. Manager, I don't know that we have time to really get down into the consent agenda items. So if council has no other business, I'm going to recess until 7 o'clock. Monday, May 1st, the Goldsboro City Council meeting is called to order. I'm going to wait just a second for Councilwoman Matthews to get back in her seat here. If you will, Madam Clerk, first of all, before we do that, let me ask Prophet Taylor from the Philadelphia Community Church to come forward and lead us in prayer, and then we'll follow that with our Pledge of Allegiance. Good evening, sir.
Thank you. Let us pray. God, in Christ Jesus, we thank and we praise you for this day, for your goodness and your mercy. God, we pray, Father, in this meeting that your will be done in this earth as done in heaven. God, bless each and every one that's here today, God, and give the council members, God, a spirit of wisdom and revelation and knowledge of all things, God, in the name of Jesus. God, we ask this, oh God, so that Christ could be glorified during this meeting, that he can be magnified, that you will bless this city in the name of Jesus. And God, I pray for each and every one here tonight that you will bless them and keep them. God, make your face shine upon them and be gracious unto them. Father, in the name of Jesus, lift up your countenance upon them. Give them peace, shalom, prosperity, nothing missing, nothing broken, nothing lacking in their life. This I ask in the name that's above every name. Name of Jesus, I pray and I thank you. All God's people say amen.
Amen. Amen. Thank you, Pastor. Thank you. And come back too. I like that. Join us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please. Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, Madam Clerk, if you'll call the roll, please.
Mayor Ham.
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Polak.
Present.
Councilwoman Jones. Present. Councilman Broadway.
Present.
Councilwoman Matthews.
Present.
Councilman Gaylor.
Present.
Councilman Bass.
Here.
Okay, we're all here. First item on the agenda this session is approval of the minutes of the work session and regular meeting minutes of April 17, 2023. Is there a motion to approve?
Move to adopt.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion is made and second. Any discussion? If not, all members approved, please signify by raising your hand. Okay, the minutes are approved. At this time, we have a presentation of Mental Health Month proclamation, and Councilmember Broadway will present that.
Mental Health Month proclamation. Whereas mental health is essential to everyone's overall health and well-being, and whereas all Americans experience times of difficulty and stress in their lives, and whereas prevention is an effective way to reduce the burden of mental health conditions, whereas there is a strong body of research that supports specific tools that all Americans can use to better handle challenges and protect their health and well-being, and whereas mental health conditions are real and prevalent in our nation, and whereas with effective treatment, those individuals with mental health conditions can recover and lead full, productive lives, and whereas each business, school, government agent, healthcare provider, organization, and citizen shares the burden of mental health problems and has responsibility to promote mental health, mental wellness, and support prevention efforts. Therefore, I, David Ham, Mayor of the City of Goldsboro, North Carolina, do hereby proclaim May 23rd as Mental Health Month and call upon the citizens, government agencies, public and private institutions, businesses, and schools in Goldsboro to recommit our community to increasing awareness and understanding of mental health, the steps our citizens can take to protect their mental health, and the need for appropriate and accessible service for all people with mental health conditions. In witness thereof, I have hereby set my hand and affixed the seal of the City of Goldsboro this first day of May. And if I'll come down and I have And I think we have a presentation.
Good evening, everyone. And thank you for these moments. It's very important in our community. This is May Mental Health Month, and it is time for us to think about what we can do to better preserve our mental health in our community. I would like to leave posters to be placed somewhere within your building. Also remind you, we know the incidence of suicide has been increasing. It is very important that we know there is a way to reach out. And also, one of the things they're trying to promote this time is to look around and look within. Look in your community and look within yourself as you look to improve your mental health. And so I'm going to leave this magnet for you to put where you can take that tells you to take a moment to be mindful, to improve where we are today. Thank you so much for your help and for your ability to look at the needs of our community.
If you'll leave those with our clerk.
Yeah, right. Oh, thank you, yes, I want to do that.
Okay,
which way looks the best way?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Before you sit down, ma'am, when is the mayor's walk? Do you know that date?
The mayor's walk is Wednesday the 3rd. For the disability walk,
yes,
is at the hub at 9:30. At the hub at 9:30 on Wednesday. Also, would like to on the 30th at Wayne Community, we're having a speaker come to help us learn how to better use our tools to be better health, and you'll get information about that. But at Wayne Community at 3:30 on the 30th.
The walk starts at 10 o'clock, right?
Yeah, but we.
Okay.
Well, we can't. I go at 9:30.
Yes, ma'am. I can understand.
That's on
that.
my calendar. Thank you.
And Mayor Pro Tem Pollock and I will be there, and the other council members will be there as well. So, okay, we have no other presentations. Let's move into the public hearings. And at this time, we'll start with issue 623, place of entertainment.
Yeah, you get sworn in as this is a continuation.
Anyone that's sworn in to speak for this event, this item, that wants to speak, please come forward and get sworn in.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. As most of you remember, this is a continuation from our last council meeting regarding a place of entertainment with no ABC permit at 307 Berkeley Boulevard. As most of you are familiar, this is where the Dunham's Sporting Goods is. That's the location of where this is. The owner is AVI Investments and the applicant is Trita Oates, and what she's requesting here was a special use permit to establish this flexible space that could be rented out for different types of events. Here you can see the aerial image of the property where it's located off of North Berkeley. It's located within the shopping center zoning district, and this district promotes high quality, unified, and accessible development that's going to serve the community and the surrounding area. Looking at this, you can see shopping center predominantly. Looking at what our land use plan recommends, being in that commercial designation, it does recommend that infill development, which this would qualify as 2 units would be occupied for this use. Here you can see the land use plan designation. And so whenever this went to TRC, there were no specific comments. Here you can see just a general layout of the floor plan. That's what it's assumed to look like during operation. And so getting into more of the specifics as far as what council requested at the last meeting, the main concern was the shared parking and whether or not they were going to be able to obtain this type of shared parking agreement with the adjacent property. And so what we have found is we found evidence that allows for council, in staff's opinion, to allow for the current parking that exists on site to accommodate and serve the parking that this use requires. So looking at what we found, or what I found during my evaluation, Article 6.1.2 of our UDO states that unless otherwise approved, lots that contain more than one use, which this lot contains multiple uses, must provide parking and loading equal to the amount required by all uses. It's under my interpretation, and after speaking with Ron as well on this, that council has the ability to grant this otherwise approval here. The parking lot in question has 210 parking spaces. I went to the site 4 consecutive days in a row. At no point was there ever more than 46 cars on site. This is well below 50% of that parking lot being occupied. The most I saw was 46 at 12:45 p.m. And so, based off of that finding, I'm rescinding staff's original condition to require that shared parking, as I believe parking is adequate there. And so staff is recommending approval of this with no conditions. And if there's any questions on this, I can take them at this time.
Anyone have any questions?
I'll just Austin, I appreciate this. At the previous meeting, I apologize if I came across a little bit too direct, but it just didn't feel right. It felt like there may have been some other pathway, and I really appreciate you and your office taking the time to revisit this. You and I haven't spoken since the last council meeting about actually at all.
Yes, sir, no, we have.
So this isn't someone pressuring the staff. It's purely just taking another look at this, seeing if there's a way to be able to make it work, and helping to set the culture of the city that we want to find a way to say yes if it fits the overall needs of the community. So I appreciate that, and I look forward to getting this one approved.
Any other questions?
Good job, thank you.
I asked before if there's anyone that wanted to speak. I'll ask again. Is anyone who wants to speak for or against this motion? Or just the item, I should say. Okay, seeing none, let me read the options here on the part of the council. So, is there a motion that the use will not materially endanger the public health or safety?
So moved.
Second.
Motion is made and second. Any discussion? All in favor, signify by raising your hand. Is there a motion that the use will not substantially injure the beneficial use of adjoining or abutting property?
So moved.
Second.
Motion is made and second. Any discussion? All in favor, signify by raising your hand. Is there a motion that the use will be in harmony with existing developmental and uses within the area in which it is located? That's the motion.
So moved.
Second.
Motion is made and second. Any discussion? If not, all in favor signify by raising your hand. Finally, is there a motion that the use will be in general conformity with the City of Goldsboro's comprehensive land use plan?
So moved.
Second.
Motion is made and second. In discussion. If not, all in favor signify by raising your hand. Okay. Okay, the next one is contiguous annexation petition.
Yes, sir. This is the public hearing for the contiguous annexation request by the Perry Real Estate Group for property located at the intersection of New Hope Road and Hare Road. This is 2 properties that consist of approximately 32.7 acres, as they have frontage on both Hare Road and West New Hope Road. So to give you a timeline on this, there's not been any site plan approved for these specific properties at this time, and there's not any development plans on file for this property. On April the 4th, Laura Getz, City Clerk, certified sufficiency for the properties proposed, And then at our meeting on April the 17th, council set tonight for the public hearing. Looking at the departmental report and what services can be provided to this, there were no concerns from any department within the city, and they do anticipate being able to provide all services to these parcels when it is developed. Here you can see a survey of the two properties, and our engineering department did certify that this does close and this is a valid survey. So the pre-development revenue for these two properties comes in at $2,694.16. Whenever we did our estimated fire share calculation, we did not exceed $100, so there's not going to be any estimated payments to the Sawston Volunteer Fire Department. And this area will become part of the District 5 voting district unless otherwise directed. And so your required action is by motion to approve this annexation request or to deny the request.
Any question of Austin?
Move to approve.
Well, let me open it to public comment. So this is a public hearing on this contiguous annexation petition. Is there anyone in the audience that wishes to come forward and speak for or against the proposed annexation? Anyone wish to speak? If not, I'll close the public hearing. Is there a motion to adopt the ordinance annexing the property as stated in the memo?
Move to approve.
Second.
Is there any discussion? There being no discussion, all in favor signify by raising your hand. Okay, motion carries. Next item is Z523 Mallard Oil Company.
Sir, this is a general rezoning request by the Mallard Oil Company for a property located at the intersection of North William Street and West Tommy's Road. Property is roughly 8 acres. The owner is Elizabeth Kirby Bischoff. The current zoning is residential 16. They're proposing that this go to a general business zoning district. This property falls within 3 land use designations, but is predominantly made up of the mixed use 2 land use designation. And here you can see the aerial image where it's one parcel of record where Tommy's Road does separate the northern piece of that property from that larger part that's right there at the intersection. In the general vicinity there, you can see that is a Circle K gas station. If some of you are familiar with where that is off of North William Street. And so looking at what is existing, that residential 16, as you know, is intended for single family dwellings that are not going to interfere with the quiet residential nature of that district, and it's going to preclude any kind of commercial type development. Or that general business is going to allow for goods and services that not only serve that immediate community but the surrounding area as well. Looking at the surrounding zoning here, you have residential 16 with some highway business and general business in the general vicinity as well. And so here on this table comparison, you can see a general idea of what types of uses might occur in this proposed zoning district. Things such as an auto shop, a bus terminal, a dry cleaning business, a motel or hotel, or a pawn shop. Things of that nature could locate on this property if rezoned. And here you can just see the adjacent zoning districts in that general vicinity, where you do see a trend of general business zoning developing around that intersection and its proximity to 70 as well.
Austin.
Yes.
On that last one, what's that little corner that's sticking out there across William?
That is the ETJ boundary line.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. So here you can see where the land use plan includes this predominantly within that mixed use 2 area. This desires uses that are going to serve the surrounding area, and a higher traffic volume is expected to occur with uses that would locate within this land use designation. While the general business district is not identified as a corresponding district, the types of uses that would be allowed in this district would not be out of character with that mixed use designation, and in turn these types of uses could actually support future types of mixed use development to occur on adjacent properties. And as mentioned, there are very small portions that fall within those other designations. Here you can see down at the southern portion, you do have a piece that falls within mixed use and then a very small piece within that medium density residential. And so looking at what we received whenever this went out for TRC review, due to the nature of this being a general rezoning and we don't yet know the use of the property, there were no comments. Those would not be generated until we send out site plans for review. And so looking at staff's overall evaluation, it is adjacent to a property that is zoned general business that does have a Circle K gas station. The uses that would be allowed would not be out of character, and the rezoning of this parcel would allow for commercial services to establish themselves in convenient locations to the other surrounding properties as they develop, which there's a lot of undeveloped land out there, which could serve a residential mixed-use type of development in the future. And so we're recommending approval based on all of these facts, mainly because you already have multiple general business districts that are locating along North William Street. We do believe that this rezoning would create a situation for mixed-use types of development to occur on these adjacent properties in the future as well. And so whenever this was heard by Planning Commission at our most recent meeting, they voted 6 in favor, 0 against for approval of this rezoning request. And if council has any questions on this rezoning proposal, I can take them at this time.
Does council have any questions for Mr. Austin? Appears there are none. So this is a public hearing for the residential change, change of residential 16 to general business. Anyone wishing to speak, please come forward. Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
Give us your name, please.
All right, Trey Taylor. I'm an attorney here in town, Warren, Carl, Walston, Taylor, and Smith. Good to see you. I'm speaking in favor of this request and ask that you consider it favorably. Mallard Oil Company has a contract to purchase this property. It's across the street from Circle K. A lot of money's been spent on William Street to upgrade it. I would call it gateway to downtown Goldsboro. This property's right by the interchange. It would be ideal for a gas station and a convenience store. We think it would serve the citizens of Goldsboro and traveling public very well, and be compatible with the uses in the area. And I think been no protest petition filed, so I don't think there's any active opposition that I'm aware of it, and would fit very well with the neighborhood. And so we encourage that approval favorably if you so consider. I've got Mr. Titus Smith here with Mallard Oil Company to answer any specific questions you might have, but we would request your approval.
Anyone have a question of Mr. Taylor? All right, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Trey.
Anyone else wishing to speak, please come forward. I see no one rising, so I'll close the public hearing. And at this time, I'll I'll ask if there's a motion to adopt the approved ordinance within the inclusion of the consistency statement, or is there a motion to deny and adopt the ordinance to deny with the inclusion of a statement that deems this conditional rezoning request to be inconsistent?
Motion to approve.
I have a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion is made and second. Any discussion? If not, all in favor signify by raising your hand. The motion carries. Okay, the next item is the annual action plan review, and community relations are going to come up and speak. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and Council.
Good evening.
I'm here for the FY 23-24 Annual Action Plan Review and Public Hearing. The U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, also known as HUD, has allocated $361,561 in CDBG and $293,636 in home funds to the City of Goldsboro for fiscal year 23-24 to develop viable urban communities by providing decent housing, suitable living environment, and expanding economic opportunities for persons of low to moderate income. In addition, there are prior year funds allocated to the city that remain available to support previously programmed and ongoing community development activities. Due to the restrictive use of funds placed on the home program to focus on projects and or activities designed exclusively to create affordable housing for low-income households, the city has historically each year carried over a substantial amount of prior year home funds when it has not undertaken large development projects. Staff have developed plans to responsibly spend these funds in the upcoming fiscal year. A draft copy of the 23-24 Annual Action Plan was made available to the public on April 14th for a 30-day public comment period that runs through May 13th, 2023. A public meeting was held on April 11th during the regular meeting of the Commission on Community Relations and Development to discuss priorities and eligible activities. During this evening's regular meeting of the City Council, staff would provide the Council with a presentation highlighting proposed activities of the FY 23-24 Annual Action Plan and open a public hearing to gather public input on the use of these federal funds. All public meetings and hearings, as well as the availability of the draft plan for public review and comment, were duly advertised in the Goldsboro News Argus, as well as on the city's website and other local and media outlets. The 23-24 Annual Action Plan is the fourth year of implementing the city's 2020-2024 5-year consolidated plan. The Annual Action Plan provides a concise summary of the actions, activities, and specific federal and non-federal resources that will be used each year to address the priority needs and specific goals identified by the consolidated plan. Again, for fiscal year 23-24, HUD has allocated for CDBG $361,561 and for home funds $293,636. The department has received requests for proposed activities, the first being H.E. McNair Housing Development, which would be a infrastructure, public facilities, and improvement project to be funded potentially with CDBG. There's also a property owner that owns Hopkins Street Apartments just off of South John Street. She's looking for rehabilitation to in turn rent the properties or the apartments out to senior citizens. And then there's Tiffany Garden Phase 2. Council is familiar with Mr. Mark Morgan, who has been assisted not with HUD funding but with other city departments on Tiffany Garden Project Phase 1, and he has presented to the city for Phase 2 of his project. The following activities have been tentatively appropriated as following. For program admin, HUD does allow a maximum of 20% of CDBG funds to be used towards program administration. That total is $72,312. For home, the maximum amount allowed is 10%. For admin is $29,336,000. Program administration is to support program delivery. Demolition and clearance is another proposed activity with the use of current CDBG or the fiscal year 23 CDBG at $55,015. There's also prior year CDBG funds that could be used at $100,000. And that activity will be to address slum and blight. Homeowner rehabilitation, CDBG funds at $180,000. There are prior year home funds that could be utilized towards homeowner rehabilitation as well. And the goal is to assist 6 homeowners at a maximum of $30,000 per home. Public services, the maximum that HUD allows for public services to make grants to nonprofits is 15% of our annual CDBG allocation. That total for FY 23 would be $54,234. Affordable housing projects, the city can appropriate for home funds for the fiscal year 23-24, $150,296, and also utilize prior year CDBG and home funds. And that will be to construct or rehabilitate approximately 30 rental units. Down payment assistance at $70,000 to assist 7 first-time home buyers with down payment and closing costs. affordable housing, CHODO, that HUD requires a maximum of our home, 15% of our home allocation to go to a certified community housing development organization. And for fiscal year 23, the CHODO amount would be $44,004. Activity totals for CDBG would be the fiscal year 23-24 allocation at $361,561. For home, $293,636. And then again, available prior year funds, CDBG $155,000, and then we have $904,597 in prior year home funds. And that is all I have, Mayor.
So, is there any questions on the part of the council to Felicia? Anyone? Okay, this is a public hearing on the 23-24 annual action plan. Anyone wishing to speak, please come forward. Good evening, ma'am.
Good evening. My name is Phyllis Merritt James, and I just came to, again, appreciative of all the work they did. I was in with their session that they had, and it still shocks me that we have almost over $850,000 of untouched funds for the home program, and we have such a homeless and under-housed population. So hopefully, as they put their wishes out and desires out for this plan, the money will be freed up readily, and all these units can come to fruition, and we can really address the needs of this community. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak? Anyone else wish to speak?
Hi there.
Good
evening,
evening.
everyone.
Could
Thank you
give
for
us
the
your name,
opportunity.
please?
I'm just going to read. My name is Terry Bradley.
One second.
Okay, sure. My name is Terry Bradley, and I am here to briefly speak to the annual action plan. On a positive note, you know, we've done such a great job here, and near the end of 2022, the action plan was presented to the public during a public hearing. Several NPOs came and shared their application with the council, and some went a step beyond, having those who receive services share how the organizations help them. Shortly after the meeting, the City of Goldsboro put out a public feedback survey, which was available for a fair amount of time. As a result of the public comments and feedback, the survey and conversations, and input from the Advisory Commission, the city we went back and updated the process. I do want to applaud the transparency and efforts of the city to have follow through with the processes and actually took some time to input and make changes. In reviewing the current draft, I did have questions or input. As a novice, I may not be interpreting what I see because, you know, this is not my genre here, but I wanted to speak specifically to the homeless. There is also a hidden definition of homeless, not just on the surface of what HUD defines, but we also have those that are couch surfing, family and their friends, seniors who cohabitate with family, young adults, and runaways. These are amongst a few of the other hidden homeless. These and many others are in danger, much danger as the tent cities. They are unnourished and they lack medical care and can be life or death situations for seniors. Mind you, many may not know they need medical care and can be numb to their situation because it's their normal situation. For example, a headache cannot just be a headache. Maybe it's a precedent to a stroke or a heart attack or something like that. And so when we have the hidden homeless, like the senior citizens living with their family, they're just kind of like in the background. You don't see them out in public, and you know, they're just there because the family's giving them shelter, but they also need medical care and may not have medical coverage and such like that. Okay, so in the current plan, you will see the term 31 homeless throughout, and I'm not sure again if that's what I'm seeing, if that's an accurate number.
You refer to the home ARP allocation plan, not the annual action plan.
Right. Okay. Okay, well, you're right. Okay, and so anyway, we do have more than 31 homeless. Thank you, Felicia. In the city, and I'm not an expert by any means. Okay, I'm sorry, I'm trying to watch the clock. I'm not an expert by any means, but I can say that I've learned a lot listening to the meetings, having face-to-face conversation with the people on the street. reaching out to those who post negative comments on social media, having conversations with them behind the scenes, and swapping numbers and speaking with those who live throughout these neighborhoods. I've heard many people ask, have you had boots on the ground? Thank you, Brandy. Have you been to any meetings? Have you reached out to the BPOs? Have you talked to anybody in these communities? And I can say I have talked to a lot of these people. I'm in contact with them, and I still don't have the answers. But in putting together these experiences, with the research in other cities, states, and pilot programs that have been approved by HUD, it's clear an unsurmountable issue of homelessness can be addressed and can be done quickly. Only if we have forward-thinking process and we follow through and never leave a meeting without asking what's next and when. What works is divergent thinking outside the box, not taking no for an answer. Keep asking why until we get the what. Divergent thinking is always about exploring new ideas, approaching problems with different angles, and finding creative solutions. It requires us to think nonlinear, breaking from old conversations, moving into actionable items, and goal-driven accountability. Divergent thinking closes the door and opens new doors to seeing clear solutions. Solutions like private funding for older structures owned by the city, previously owned by the city but now owned by the private sector. In this scenario and pilot program, the city leased the buildings that were purchased by private funders, and then they were able to implement their own servicing inside these buildings. Moving from divergent thinking into divergent action, all of these great ideas, future development, are hopeful. Most love what we see coming down the pike, but that's a perspective from where I sit. What's more important that I'd like to add to this conversation is that we've done a lot collectively as a city and as an advisory commission to include those who live in these situations in our conversations as part of the process. But we need to partner with them and not just ask what they think or what they're looking for. We need to partner with them and maybe have them have their own advisory commission, like for each neighborhood, if that makes sense. In a pilot program, the city was able to document how many people were on this new advisory. They were able to document, let me back up a little bit. There was a pilot program with private funding where a private person purchased a building during COVID. And the numbers were so good that it turned into HUD, that HUD used their program as a pilot program. So a private funder purchased an old hotel, and then the city put in some sort of implementation process to house the homeless. And the numbers and the program were followed so well that they were able to track and validate that they housed up to 85 people and actually found 85 permanent homes for these people that were housed in this pilot program. So HUD is adopting that option as a new program to house the homeless. This concept can also be used for community economic and child care programs. I'm just asking that we as a unit, as a city, and as a community learn to embrace the power of divergent thinking and unlock the possibilities. Let's just not do the same thing that we're always doing. Because I've been in plenty of meetings, everybody has great ideas, and then I walk away a little frustrated because there's no actionable items and no plans, So I'm myself and some others that I know are just going behind the scenes and just having conversations. That's just a start, So that's all I want to add. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that wishes to speak on the annual action plan? Let us reset the clock before you speak, but come on up. Okay.
All right, good evening, Council. I just wanted to come up.
Could you give me your name, please?
Sure. My name is Washia Lancaster,
okay.
And I am co-chair for the Community Relation Development. I just wanted to say we had our first roundtable last week, and it went really well, and that the commission is looking forward to doing more. As Ms. Felicia said, we have the funds available for down payment assistance, and that's something that we want to tap into, letting our residents know what is needed for them to become homeowners. So as a commission, we plan on having more roundtables and letting the community know what's available. That's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else wish to speak? If not, I'll close the public hearing on this matter. And before you speak, I want to again say thank you to the members of the Community Relations Commission. You guys do some super work out there, and thank you for your time to that organization.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. So staff is asking that Council will consider the annual action plan public comments, direct any appropriate changes to the plan, and approve the plan at your May 15th City Council meeting.
Okay, ma'am,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, at this time, we will go into our public comment period. Remind the members that want to speak, you should have signed in if you want to speak. And our public speaking period will last 30 minutes and be broken down in 3-minute segments per speaker. And you'll be given a warning buzz, and then at the end of the 3 minutes, you'll get another sound signifying that your time has expired. Madam Clerk, to who do we have to speak?
Christopher Ward.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
Good evening.
How y'all doing tonight? My name is Christopher Ward. I told y'all I'll be back. I won't go and speak, but hey, I'm here. Why not? 3 minutes, free time, say whatever I want. I'm gonna utilize it. With that being said, the last time I was here, I talked about community, everybody coming together, you know, people on the panel with the people in the community, people in the community with the people on the panel. I've been doing a lot of thinking. I just heard y'all talk about policing parking spaces for downtown. That sounds cool. I get it. It's probably something that's needed. But surrounding this downtown area is also the highest crime rates. You know what I'm saying? And that means something. You can invite all of the good people that you want to downtown, but the outside is still going to look the same way if we don't do nothing about that. You get what I'm saying? And that's going to cause your downtown to look how it looked about 10 years ago. I don't think y'all want that. I don't want that. Something has to be done. With me saying that, y'all was talking about utilizing police officers that's already understaffed as a way of kind of policing the parking. Not being funny, just the ideal. Those same officers can take an hour to go into the communities where the crime is happening. Show their face, knock on the door, say, hey, I'm Officer so-and-so, so-and-so, nice to meet you. I'll be policing your community. If you have any questions for me, give me a call. You know, that would start a relationship somewhere with the community and the law enforcement that y'all tell us to police to. I heard it said probably about 5 times in the last meeting, hey, if you see something happening, pick up the phone, call. You see something happening, pick up the phone and call. Not trying to be funny, just my thought. If little Tommy that I can actually put a name with is doing something and I know that the end result is going to have him downtown sleeping on a mat with piss poor food, pardon my French, I probably ain't going to call the local police department who I don't know nobody name up there, if that makes sense. Relationship matters. And when you build relationship, man, you build bridges that are not broken. With that being said, that's my time. Y'all have a great night.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
The next name is Terry, but I think she was here for public hearing. Okay. The next name is Yvonnya.
Good evening, ma'am.
Good evening. I'm here tonight because I caught the ending with your discussion about parking, which I'm really, really disappointed about. I think you guys pulled a fast one. You brought up an excellent point. The voices that were heard were definitely not our voices. And it's interesting to me the types of voices that are not heard in this community and the voices that do get heard in this community. And just like the gentleman who just came here and said, how is it that we can find officers to police downtown, but we're not as worried about it overall in the city? There is a word for it. It's called privilege. And there's a lot of privilege that goes on down here. I'll give you a perfect example. Let me be clear. The ice storm speaks for itself. I don't charge other people. You can call yourself a merchants association. You don't speak for me. That's why I don't like other people speaking for me, because they don't speak for me. The reason why they could not answer your question in regards to, did you speak to the barbershop? Because they didn't. That's not the voices that they wanted to hear. When we came to this last meeting and all those people who came out, not one of their voices, nothing I said, nothing Commissioner Williams said, nothing Mr. Sanchez says, none of that was incorporated in a plan. because there was no plan. All you're doing is regurgitating what you've been regurgitating forever and ever and ever. There was no input from the community that came onto the table to say, hey, let's make something happen. You didn't. So I know Councilwoman Jones and Councilman Pollack, you said you had concerns. That's why I'm a little confused. Why did you vote for it if you had concerns? And you don't have to answer it, but it doesn't make sense. And you have to make this make sense. I want to know why our voices don't matter. You said it in the last meeting. Oh, thank you so much for your feedback. We appreciate it. It matters. You all, with the exception of one, showed us that our voices did not matter. And so when you talk about the things that are happening in this community with violence and why is it happening this way, Tupac said it best. They planted seeds and they hatched. A lot of seeds have been planted and they're hatching, and we don't feel like we're being heard. That's the result of what you see in this community a lot.
Yes, may I just
Sure.
speak to that? Yes, I did say I had concerns, and I still do. What I was pleased with, and the reason that I voted the way I did, was because I am looking for the options. And I want options to be done to work out the cards for the elderly or whoever is going to be parking there. If we approve that, I only agreed to that if those options were in that plan. So that is why I voted for that.
And I would have loved for, and I hear you on that, but I would love for that to have happened before a vote. Let them put those options in. Let them come and talk. That's one issue. But there's other issues that people brought on that table that are not included. They didn't, I spoke to some of them, but what I had to say is not what they wanted to hear.
Thank you, ma'am. Anyone else wish to speak? I'm sorry, on the roll.
That's it.
On the roll. Okay, I'm going to close the public comment period, and we'll go into the consent agenda items. Mr. Manager.
Okay, amending a special revenue fund ordinance to fire other restricted revenue funds. Ms. Quinn?
Good evening, Mayor and Council.
Good evening.
Tonight we have an amendment to Special Revenue Fund, the Fire Other Restricted Funds. At the September 6, 2022 meeting, Council authorized the establishment of the Grant Project Fund Ordinance for Fire Other Restricted Funds. This was in order to account for the collection and disbursement of funds received from various donations, local grants, and fundraisers and other restricted revenue sources for the fire department. The fire department has received donations earmarked for summer camps to be taught by the fire department, the amount of $1,600, and it's necessary to appropriate those expenditures in order for the department to begin fulfilling the terms of the donation. And we recommend that the attached Special Revenue Fund ordinance be amended.
Any questions? Okay, next item.
Okay. My next item is accept or reject the initial bid and authorize finance to advertise for upset bids for 808 and 800 West Grantham Street from Two Farms, Inc., which is a Maryland corporation. The staff has received an offer to purchase the city-owned property. Council must either accept or reject the offer and, if accepted, authorize the advertisement for the upset bids. The following offer was received from Two Farms, Inc. in the amount of $675,000. The bid deposit was $33,750, which was received in the form of a cashier's check drawn on an out-of-state bank. The parcel is 808 West Grantham, which is 4.41 acres with a total tax value of $681,000, and 800 West Grantham, which is 0.11 acres and has a tax value of $2,500. The offer is at least 50% of the tax value of the property, and the bid deposit is 5%. The offer has additional terms and conditions that it wishes to negotiate if it is the winning high bidder for the property. The resolution has been drafted in order to allow city staff to negotiate the final agreement and for the mayor to execute the final contract and/or deed for closing if the original offer is the winning high bidder. The offer is a duly organized company registered with the Maryland Secretary of State, and it is also registered as a foreign corporation in the state of North Carolina. I also want you to note that CDBG funds were expended to demolish and clean up the old Gold's Inn Hotel in 2014 in the amount of $250,971. These funds would need to be reimbursed to the CDBG funds and utilized for an allowable and eligible type of expenditure. Any remaining proceeds from the closing would be deposited to the general fund. So at this time, I just need the council to either accept or reject the offer for this property.
Do you have any questions on this issue? If not, I wanted to read a motion here to accept or reject the initial bid and authorize finance to advertise for upset bids for 808 and 800 West Grantham Street from Two Farms Incorporated, a Maryland corporation. That is the request. Is there a motion to accept or reject the initial bid and authorize finance to advertise for upset bids? Is there a second? Well, let me first of all, is there a motion to
So moved.
okay, to accept?
Second.
Okay, motion is made, and it's been second. Any discussion? If not, all in favor?
Just get clarification, it was a motion to accept, because you said the second.
Accept.
You just said yeah.
Yes, he said accept.
Motion to accept.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Okay. So if there's no discussion, all in favor signify by raising your hand. All opposed? We have no one opposed. Okay.
Thank you.
Continue on, please. We're at
Public utilities.
Item I, utilizing North Carolina General Statute 143.
Good evening, Mayor, council members.
Good evening.
I'm Richard Hamilton with the Public Utilities Department, and I'm here to speak to you all on behalf of Bert Sherman. We're gonna talk about the Public Utilities Department has two projects to advertise for bid. The compost facility for Bay 8 needs to be closed in to protect the stored equipment. And over at the water treatment plant, we trying to get the installation of a 16-inch and a 20-inch flow mag meter to achieve a more accurate reading of discharge flow from the water treatment plant. We're trying to get professional design drawings done for the Bay 8 enclosure and the mag meter project, and that would allow us to have the contractors give them a set of drawings to go by. The estimated fees for each design drawing project are less than $10,000. And we're recommending that City Council adopt the attached resolution authorizing the use of North Carolina General Statute 143-6432, exception to the procurement requirements of North Carolina General Statute 143-6431, architectural, engineering, and surveying services.
Any questions? Yes, sir. Thank you. Next item, J, annexation ordinance revision.
Yes, sir, Mayor. This is an item that was at the last council meeting, and there was some discussion about which election district the Magnolia Grove subdivision is to fall within. Whenever this was initially annexed back in November and became effective in December, that initial annexation ordinance did not place this property definitively within an electoral district. On April the 20th, I had a meeting with Pointer Sproul to discuss this specific annexed area, looking at development trends in the city, the amount of members within each district, and based off of that conversation, Pointer Sproul and myself both have decided and recommend that due to District 3 having far less numbers than District 5 and the trend of annexations occurring directly adjacent to District 5, it makes most sense for this to go within District 3. So we're recommending that this annexation ordinance be revised to include the Magnolia Grove subdivision within District 3.
Any other questions? Okay, sir. Thank you. And Madam Clerk, you have the last item, K.
Good evening, council. I have the last item, revising the policy regarding the use of city-owned property for special events. The policy regarding the use of city-owned property for special events was discussed with council at the November 20th, 2017 meeting, but was not adopted by resolution. The special events parade street closing permit application will also be updated to reflect the revisions in the policy regarding the use of city-owned property for special events. Updates to the policy are needed regarding the hub, increasing the application fees, and the insurance for carnivals, insurance requirements for carnivals. If the hub is requested for the venue, applicants should review and complete the hub rental request form located online. It's also important to clarify the process for waiving application fees. Carnival applicants must provide proof of liability insurance coverage of at least $5 million, and the city must be listed as an additional insured. It is recommended that council adopt the attached resolution approving the changes to the policy regarding the use of city-owned property for special events.
Any questions on this item?
You said the insurance went up too?
No, that was a
That
requirement.
was always.
Previous agreement, previous modification, I think from $1 million or $2 million to $5 million.
It was brought before council before. We're just updating the policy to reflect it.
I know, so what I'm saying is.
I think it was $1 million.
It went
before.
from something else to something to the 5
I think it was $1
million.
million before, and now and according to finance, it needed to be $5 million.
It needed to be, or?
Has to be.
It has to be.
From
Well-
finance, for carnivals.
She's not here right now, but that was suggested, I believe, by the insurance company. So that decision's already been made, already been presented before, we're just codifying it. We've been using that for as long as I can remember.
It just hasn't been presented. It's part of the application.
Any other questions? If not, could I have a motion to adopt the consent agendas as presented, items G through K? Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion's made and second to adopt the consent agendas G through K. Is there any more discussion? If not, Madam Clerk, if you call the roll, please.
Mayor Ham?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Pellak?
Yes.
Councilwoman Jones?
Yes.
Councilman Broadway?
Yes.
Councilwoman Matthews?
Yes.
Councilman Gaylor?
Yes.
Councilman Batts?
Yes.
Okay, consent agenda items are approved as presented. We have no items on requiring individual action. City manager report.
Yes, thanks here to our Parks and Rec employees, as well as the Evergreen Garden Club and the Nahunta Friends Church, who have been working on Center Street downtown and the John Street parking lot beautification efforts. A lot's been done over the last week or two, and we've got some more work going forward here, but it looks great. I just wanted to publicly recognize those who did that. Appreciate the volunteers. Also this weekend, we've got our spring litter cleanup. It's on our website. We have 54 volunteers so far that are going to participate at 6 locations. We can always use more volunteers, so I'll put that out there. If you'd like to sign up, please go to our homepage on the slider. You can do that. The Kiwanis train station's grand opening with the new station there, and ribbon cutting will be May 6th is Saturday as well, from 11 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. That's all I have, sir.
Okay. We have 3 proclamations, and I'm going to start off with the first one. You got any veterans in the audience here? A lot of people have left. I'm sure there were some veterans here before. Okay, well, we've got 4 sitting up here this evening. And being prior military, I'm always proud to recognize the military, and this is a Military Appreciation Month proclamation, so let me read it. Whereas our brave servicemen and women, their families and their loved ones share in the support and sacrifices necessary for our freedom, and whereas this proclamation marks the beginning of Military Appreciation Month, a month in which the Department of Defense and our grateful nation will honor the courage, commitment, and selfless service of our military And whereas community members, businesses, military bases, and posts and other organizations are encouraged to recognize military members and their loved ones with special events such as family activities, community gatherings, sporting events, retail discounts, and other forms of special recognition throughout the entire month of May. And whereas military-connected nonprofit organizations, veteran services organizations, and other military service providers, both public and private, are encouraged to band together to honor and serve our military families and their loved ones during the month of May. Now therefore be resolved that the City of Goldsboro Council does hereby proclaim May 23 as Military Appreciation Month and officially recognize the many sacrifices made by our veterans, service members, wounded warriors, their families, and their survivors, as well as the vast network of organizations that serve these heroes across the state. In witness therefore, I hereunto set my hand and affix the seal of Goldsboro, North Carolina, this first day of May 2023. Can never show appreciation enough, I don't think. Okay, the next one is a special one to us as well, and Council Mayor Pro Tem Pollock is going to read this. This is our Municipal Clerk's Week proclamation.
Municipal Clerk's Week proclamation. Whereas the office of the municipal clerk, a time-honored and vital part of the local government, exists throughout the world. And whereas the office of the municipal clerk is the oldest among public servants. And whereas the office of the municipal clerk provides professional link between the citizens, the local governing bodies, and agencies of government at the levels. And whereas municipal clerks have pledged to be ever mindful of their neutrality and impartiality, rendering equal service to all. And whereas the municipal clerk serves as the information center on functions of local government and community. And whereas municipal clerks continually strive to improve the administration of the affairs of the office of the municipal clerk through participation in education programs, seminars, workshops, and the annual meetings of their state, province, county, and international professional organizations. And whereas it is most appropriate that we recognize the accomplishments of the office of the municipal clerk. Now therefore be it resolved that the Goldsboro City Council does hereby recognize the week of April 30th through May 6, 2023 as Municipal Clerks Week, and further extend appreciation to our city clerk, Laura Getz, our deputy city clerk, Holly Jones, and all municipal clerks for their vital services they perform and their exemplary dedication to the communities they represent. In witness whereof I have hereunto set my hand and caused the seal of the City of Goldsboro, North Carolina, to be affixed on this first day of May 2023.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. And now, National Day of Prayer Proclamation. Councilwoman Jones will read that.
Yes. National Day of Prayer Proclamation. Whereas civic prayers and national days of prayer have been a long and venerable history in our constitutional republic, dating back to the First Continental Congress in 1975, and whereas the Declaration of Independence, our first statement as Americans of national purpose and identity, made the law of nature and nature's God the foundation of the United States of America, and inserted that people have inalienable rights that are God-given, and whereas created in 1952 by a joint resolution of the United States Congress and signed into law by President Harry S. Truman, the mission and purpose is to encourage prayer for our country and personal repentance. And whereas in 1988, legislation setting aside the first Thursday in May of each year as National Day of Prayer was passed unanimously by both House of Congress and signed by President Ronald Reagan. And whereas the Supreme Court has affirmed the right of state legislatures to open their sessions with prayer, and the Supreme Court and the U.S. Congress themselves begin each day with prayer. And whereas this year, Wayne County United in Prayer is hosting its annual local National Day of Prayer event, and whereas the National Day of Prayer is an opportunity for Americans of all faiths to join united prayer, to acknowledge our dependence on God, and to give thanks for blessings received, to request healing for wounds endured, and to ask God to guide our leaders and bring wholeness to the United States and her citizens. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Goldsboro City Council does hereby proclaim Thursday, May 4th, 2023 as a National Day of Prayer in observance of the National Day of Prayer in the city of Goldsboro, North Carolina, and commend this observance to our citizens. In witness thereof, I have hereunto set my hand and affixed the seal of the city of Goldsboro, North Carolina, this first day, May 2023. Mayor Ham.
Thank you, Councilwoman Jones. So I'll go around the horn here, so to speak, and ask if there's any final comments that the council members would like to make, and I'll start with Councilmember Bates.
Yes, thank you. I just want to say, last Thursday I had an opportunity to go to Gateway Employee Appreciation. I had a chance to meet with employees, had a good dinner. Also met two young ladies who used to take my brother to dialysis. And the kind words they said about my mom made me feel real good. And you still got drivers who've been driving 15, 20 years and remember your family. So I appreciated that. So I want to thank all the city employees, starting with the manager here, all the department heads. Just thank you for what you do, and a special thanks to Laura. Thanks so much.
Councilman Gaylor.
Sure. Thank you, Mayor. So there are a number of folks in the room that I know will be competing for positions on committees and on elected boards in the future, and I think that tonight was a good visual that at the end of the day, a decision has to be made on things that can be tough. Because in these roles, you have to hear everyone. You have to hear as many folks as possible. And I mean that. You have to hear as many folks as possible. But at the end, you're going to have some people that want Cup A and some people that want Cup B. And when we treat each other with respect, as I think we have certainly tried to do through this, you try and get the elements of Cup A and the elements of Cup B so the ultimate final decision is palatable and accomplishes what the majority of folks need and what the city needs. And those decisions can be very tough, and in pockets they can cause some significant tensions. And I'm really grateful for this body taking the time to say, all right, we need to make sure that we have ADA accessibility covered. We need to make sure that we come up with something to be able to look after these merchants and service providers that have things like that require longer than 2 hours. Also, it didn't get emphasized, but ensuring that this is something that code enforcement is able to take care of so that we're not pulling law enforcement out of our communities where they're so desperately needed right now. So that's all I'll say about that. It's at the end of the day, you're in a position where you have to choose Cup A or Cup B or mold them together in some weird way. But I would just encourage those that are currently on it and those that plan to be on it in the future, or be a separate committee, a planning commission, whatever it is, those that you have to vote against their preferences, make sure that you still reach out to them. Make sure that you still have that respect. Last 2 points, the Mayor's Disability Walk on Wednesday, 10 o'clock. That's always a fantastic event. And on Friday, something that this body put a lot of work into supporting Herman Park and the train. That new train is going to be unveiled with its new depot, and there's been just some major work going into that. So this Saturday, I hope to see everyone. Wednesday morning, hope to see everyone as well. Thank you.
Councilwoman Matthews.
Thank you, Mayor. I want to send a special early happy Teacher Appreciation Week to all of us educators. That is May 8th through the 12th. I also would like to ask the board if we could, whoever's here, recognize that next year during the ceremonial documents. Also want to say a special happy graduation to all of our seniors, kindergartners that's transitioning in District 4, in the city and in the county. Happy graduation season to you, and be safe. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem?
Yes, I just want to encourage everyone to pray continuously, not only for the violence issues that have been seen in our city, but also the mental health issues that came about tonight through the proclamation that plagued so many of our citizens, that either cause them to make bad decisions or cause life-changing events. In closing, I want to say that the school year, as Councilman Matthews said, is drawing near, and I solicit the prayers of our city for the well-being of our youth moving into the summer. I know that was my final thing, but also, like I said, I just encourage the unity and the individualism also of each member on this board as we make difficult decisions moving forward. That's what makes us unique as a board. But I have seen us as a more cohesive unit in my term, in my administration, on this board, and I just look forward to continuing to serve with all of us moving forward. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you.
No report.
Good.
I would just like to send a shout out to all the teachers. You're very important. You had a very difficult 3 years working with your students and going through COVID. So you've done an excellent job, and thank you so much. And I'd like to thank the secretaries, Laura and Holly, for all that they do. And the last thing that I wanted to talk about is the parking, because that has been on my heart, and I'm really looking forward. I do want to see that option inside the parking. I want to see those cars. I want the elderly to be able to enjoy their experience of getting their hair done without having to jump up and go and move their cars. So I'm looking forward to what comes out of this situation.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Let me just speak to the parking issue. As I said during the meeting, we've been discussing parking now since I came on the council in 2016. And it's always been a very sensitive subject. And as you see tonight, it still is. But it was, tonight we made a decision to try to put this issue to bed. There'll be some that like what we did. There'll be some that did not like what we did. But this council has spoken already, listened, gathered information, and made a decision. I spoke to the downtown development director afterwards at the break, and I said to her, go back, start tomorrow working on these issues that were brought up tonight, and come back to us. Not at the next meeting necessarily, but at the appropriate time, not to be 2 months or 3 months away, but sometime soon, and give us your proposals as how you plan to integrate and bring these issues that was talked about tonight into the parking plan. So this council will hear from them again on these provisions or suggestions, and we'll have a opportunity to speak to them, to those issues. But I commend the council on taking this issue tonight and making a decision on it, because it has been 7.5 years almost that I'm personally knowledgeable of the discussion of this matter. It's never, if it was an easy issue, we would have solved it, back in 2016. But we acted tonight, and I commend the council on it. I don't have anything else. I'll end by saying thanks to council and thank you all for coming. Adjourn.